We are the Newsroom team. Very good morning to you. We'll be with you until midday today, bringing you all the updates from around the world of news and sport. Kendall Mahamati is here on the sports desk, and of course Elvis, as always, and myself. Our focus today, well, we're looking at pre-election polls and their role in the outcome of predictions. Now, in the US, pollsters predicted that Donald Trump would lose by a country mile, but they were well wrong. The same could be said about Brexit. There are even arguments in South Africa's election, the predictions that pollsters make that were so wrong. So we ask you, can we still trust independent polls ahead of elections? We'd love to hear what you say about that in general on @SABC Newsroom, or even on our Facebook page if you like. But Elvis, as always, we conduct our own poll.
We're also conducting our own poll. The pollsters can be wrong, but we're not wrong because the viewers are our pollsters. They can poll for it. Now, we're asking you a question on the poll today. We'd like to find out. Let's see if we got it on there. There was flash floods yesterday in Johannesburg. It was chaos in the roads. And we're asking the question, is poor maintenance to be blamed? Kendall?
You know what, it's actually quite interesting that that's our poll today. And then just blame the viewers. Why don't you, Elvis, while you're at it? 70% say yes, it is poor maintenance, and 30% say no.
Yeah, because the JRA probably don't clean the gutters and the sluices and whatever they call it, where the water need to run through, and vagrants stay in some of these things where the water needs to run through to get to the rivers and to the dams, which is empty right now.
Yeah, very much so. So that's our poll and our question to you today. We'd love to hear what you think, as always. Send us your thoughts. In the meantime, we'll get on with the news and the sport.
President Jacob Zuma is expected to face yet another no-confidence vote in Parliament this afternoon. The South African Weather Service warns of further severe thunderstorms in Gauteng today, with yesterday's flash floods having claimed a number of lives. And thousands of people take to the streets across the United States in protest against some of the U.S. President-elect's views on immigrants. Now, those are all your headlines. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. Very good morning, Kendall.
Gentlemen, good morning to you. We've got a big weekend ahead of us, but before we get to that, we've got Africa's Major, which has just teed off, as well as something that I know both of you wish you were there for. I know you're both avid and keen golfers.
Be happy to be at Sun City just for a break, actually.
Yeah, yeah, I know something that I'm looking forward to over the next couple of weeks as well as we go into the December season. Good morning to you. This is what's coming up in the sports today.
43.03. It was as if he had wings on his heels in the last 50 metres.
Olympic champion and world record holder Wade van Niekerk has been named as one of the 3 shortlisted finalists for the 2016 IAAF World Athlete of the Year award. Africa's Major, the Nedbank Golf Challenge, teed off this morning with some of the creme de la creme of the golfing world lining up to take the $1.16 million winner's check.
It's going to be a challenging match for us as well because it's a team that also participated in the Olympic Games.
And Banyana play the mighty Warriors of Zimbabwe in their last friendly match ahead of the 2016 edition of the CAF African Cup of Nations. All this and more I've got for you in the sports bulletin about 10:40 or so. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Johannesburg's emergency services says it will resume their search this morning for more possible victims of yesterday evening's flash floods here in Johannesburg. Around 150 vehicles were trapped in a wave of water during peak hour traffic. At least 6 people were in danger of drowning when they were rescued, and many motorists were treated for minor injuries on the scene. A boundary wall at the Johannesburg Zoo collapsed following the heavy downpour, and the zoo remains closed indefinitely. It says no people or animals were hurt. The flooding also affected flights landing at the OR Tambo International Airport, and a number had to be diverted to other airports. Now, to give us an update on the story, we are joined on the line by the JMPD spokesperson, Superintendent Wayne Minnaar. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Can you give us, or can you please confirm for us, first and foremost, the number of fatalities of those that has perished and those that are still missing?
Yes, look, I can confirm at this stage that a woman's body was carried from the side of the river as a result of the floods, and then a man also drowned inside a Uno car in that area of the Linksfield where the floods occurred yesterday. The road is still very muddy at this moment, but however, all the traffic lanes are flowing.
Now, how bad is the damage on the roads?
No, look, the damage was had been caused mainly by the water, but I can say this moment is that the bridges itself wasn't affected. So the traffic is able to flow this morning. However, there is still mud on the road surface.
Is there any road closures?
No, there are no road closures this morning. However, the rescue teams have gone into the areas to search for more possible victims.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Mona, what advice can you give to motorists when it comes to driving in floods and like we've seen yesterday here in Johannesburg?
Look, what I want to strongly advise anybody is not to drive through water or to drive through a road which appears to be flooded. Rather use an alternative route or, if possible, make a U-turn and take another road.
That was the JMPD spokesperson, Mr. Wayne Minnaar, giving us the latest here of the situation in Johannesburg. Let's move on now to other news. President Jacob Zuma is facing another no-confidence vote in Parliament today. Now, the motion follows the release of the former Public Protector's State of Capture report. The Democratic Alliance leader, Mmusi Maimane, says his party's call for the motion will give the ANC MPs the opportunity to continue supporting President Jacob Zuma's continued disrespect for the Constitution or come out in favor of the country's development. ANC Chief Whip Jackson Mthembu has described the motion as frivolous, saying the DA's call for motions of no confidence are founded on spurious allegations and narrow political motives. The no-confidence vote will be the third in under a year, with the first two easily defeated by the ANC's majority in Parliament. The Democratic Alliance has reclaimed control of the Katalopelo municipality in Daniel Scale in the Northern Cape. The ward was left vacant when the DA's councillor-elect Johannes Baatjies was killed in an alleged political attack before he could be sworn in after the August local government elections. 2 local ANC members and 4 others were arrested on murder charges and remain in custody. The Democratic Alliance and the Katalopelo Community Forum have formed a coalition to govern the municipality. Meanwhile, in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, the ANC retained Ward 14 after it was left vacant following the murder of its councillor Ntebe Daiwili, who was gunned down shortly before the resumption of voting in the local government elections. Dolly Booty is the new ward councillor in the area, winning 54% of the vote. Ward 14 was won by Ayanda Doyokwana. Now, we will be crossing to Ngisi Khumalo later for an update on yesterday's by-elections in KwaZulu-Natal. So you have to stay tuned with us here on the Newsroom. Meanwhile, thousands of people have protested across the United States against Donald Trump, blasting his campaign rhetoric around immigrants, Muslims, and other groups. In Chicago, over 1,000 people gathered outside the Trump International Hotel and the Tower to vent their anger. In New York, thousands of protesters filled the streets as they made their way to Trump Tower, which is the president-elect's home currently. Hundreds also gathered in Philadelphia, Boston, and Seattle. Well, that's all we have for you in the news for now. Let's go over to Eben to start our conversation on hungry students and what does that have to do with where we are currently in terms of the Feast Must Fall movement. Let's talk about that right now. It's over to Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much. A very good morning to you if you've just joined us. Food insecurity on our campuses is a massive concern here in South Africa. It affects health, wellness, and the learning natively. Now, the estimates are that around 60% of students in South Africa are food insecure at times on our campuses. The University of Witwatersrand is attacking this or arresting this problem. Well, they've launched a food bank. Now, to talk about the food bank and the project, I'm joined by Karuna Singh, who's the manager of the Wits Food Bank. Karuna, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us here.
Good morning.
60%, that's the number that we've been given of students that are food insecure on campuses in South Africa at Wits. Do you have a similar number?
I can't really give you a figure. Research has been done in the past, but the numbers that we see coming through for assistance is quite high. They could be people coming through because they have had intermittent need, so not an ongoing need. But they also people who have shortfalls on their NSFAS, which the national funding. So we are seeing high numbers. For example, the food bank itself has probably handed out more than 6,000 packs this year. And if you look at individual students, it could be about 3,000 students that have received these packs. So, that is a higher number in itself.
Yeah, it is a massive number. The motivation for you starting the food bank and how do you hope this will change the lives of students, really?
Well, in 2013, we started seeing more and more students coming for assistance to the Dean of Students' office, as well as many lecturers asking for assistance through the Dean of Students' office. And then, of course, people were presenting at campus health with, hunger-related illnesses. And we then started the food bank to provide packs to students as some relief. That was in 2013. But this year, we started a hot meal a day, so 1 meal a day for students. So that's a new program. And so it's not just the food bank. We actually have food programs, and in trying to manage student hunger on our campuses, that we're trying to respond to it in the best way that we can.
How does hunger how does it affect the academic programs, and how does it affect performance in learning?
Well, clearly, if you're hungry, you can't concentrate, you can't focus. It would lead to illness. It would lead to a lack of retention, memory, retention. So all of that obviously contributes to poor outcomes, academic outcomes.
Now, of course, critics, they're quick to criticize students. Some say, yes, students don't budget properly. Some don't use their money properly. Here in Johannesburg specifically, there's talk of students spending their money that they receive, spending it on other things like alcohol and clothing, for instance. Do you share that view?
I think students will be students, there are many reasons why there would be hunger. So, for example, people coming from poorer backgrounds, but there are also students who would mismanage the resources that they do have,
Yeah.
So that's it's in itself a difficult question to answer. People make choices, but the fact that there is hunger, and hunger is a reality not just on our campuses but in our country, and food insecurity is a global issue. So that is a reality. Clearly, we need to manage the service that we provide, and that it's not just going out to people who have the resources,
Now, what would you like to see happen to arrest this problem that seems to be a growing one?
Well, I think funding to tertiary education must consider, the kind of holistic needs of students. So, for example, there has to be, if there's a bursary from the national funding agencies, they must consider the accommodation, the food needs, the basic needs of students, as well as the tuition.
Yeah.
Many bursaries come with just tuition, for example, so that also needs to be re-looked at. I'd like to see more support for the food programs, because the fact of the matter is, if we are providing, the service to students who need it, then we are helping them through the 3 years that they are on campus, and then, that's an investment in our future. And we should be able to look to the private sector for donations of food in kind, for example, for our bank, as well as donations for the food program, which is quite substantial to make it sustainable.
What about education for students and things like learning about budgeting and learning to manage your finances? Do you think there's enough of that kind of thing
I think
within the student communities? And are students open to this?
I think there's a definite need for that. I don't know how open students would be, but I think, that there is a need, and I think we can provide those kinds of programs as well.
Now, you made a call to civil society and business and the like. Have you run out of food at the food bank up till now?
There have been times when we have run quite low. I mean, we do need to keep our inventory high, so that we can meet the needs. Stop Hunger now has been great in that they provide a pack which consists of rice, lentils, and soya mince, and that really is our mainstay of our food bank because it's substantial and it's good nutrition. So, that we do have quite often, but we do need the public to assist us in that regard.
If you can, in conclusion, just kind of sketch the outlook on campuses right now with regards to students and hunger, what would that picture look like?
Well, from where we sit, there are many students who come in to get a pack or to have the daily meal. We have a number, but we are in the process of obviously looking at if those are really the people who need the service. So, we believe that people who do come would be in genuine need, but we do need to make sure that they are the people who are receiving the service as well.
Yeah.
I think from where we are, we see people who need it. They come to us because they have a need. They go to the Dean of Students' office because they need assistance. And from a student affairs point of view, obviously we want to provide a holistic development service so that we support students so they're able to focus on their academics and they're able to move on.
Well, Karuna, thank you very much for joining us today and putting us in the picture as to what it really looks like on our campuses right now. Yes, food insecurity, hunger is a real concern. Karuna Singh is the manager of the Wits Food Bank, and she gave us an idea. Throughout the rest of our programming, we'll try and get more views with regards to hunger on South Africa's campuses. Yes, it is a real concern. Now, moving on. Yesterday, we asked you the question, were you surprised by the US election results? Now, there have been lots of comments coming in. As you can imagine, social media has been flooded. Everyone's been a little bit overstimulated with Donald Trump the last couple of days, one would think. But let's have a look at some of your views with regards to what happened yesterday. This one from Umlungisi Zondo. He says, Newsroom, what a shocker. But at least we get Samuel L. Jackson now. Of course, Samuel L. Jackson said he'll be moving to South Africa if Donald Trump wins the election. That has happened. Kaylin Reddy says, Newsroom, hopefully the dollar goes down so I can buy stuff on Amazon. Yes, that's the world we live in today. Wenzel says, Newsroom, they deserve the Donald. I wish them all the luck, says Wenzel. Yep. Then Doc Moses says, SA media can learn from the US elections is to stop trying to choose a leader for South Africa. Respect the will of the people. A sobering view there from Doc Moses. This one from Kenny. He says, Newsroom, winners are born. Congratulations to Donald Trump. Thanks to the US of A. That was yesterday. Now, our picture of the day. Let's take a look at our pick of the day. This one comes from TK Komape, and it's captioned, when you don't like swimming. Let's go full screen on this one because it's caused absolute chaos here on the roads in Johannesburg. Now, unfortunately, we've lost that picture, and our systems have just crashed. So I can't even bring you the comment of the day. Let's take a short commercial break now. When we come back, we'll pick up the baton with food security on our campuses here in South Africa. Don't go away.
Macro is lending a helping hand with big festive season savings that'll move you. Like the Totem 16-inch or 20-inch Mojo bikes for only $10.99. Save 200 Rand. Or save 200 Rand on the Bounce King 10-foot trampoline, now only $24.99. And zip away on a Zingo X100 electric scooter for $1,999. Save 300 Rand. Share in these and other big festive savings for home, for business, for life. Only at Macro. Big on life.
We continue our discussion on the hungry students here in South Africa. A non-governmental organization, Stop Hunger Now, has identified the problems, especially among university students. The organization has raised funds in order to feed students at University of Free State and the University of Johannesburg. Stop Hunger provides UJ with 7,128 meals per week across the 4 campuses. In 2010, the university launched their own meal support program in partnership with Gift of the Givers, which provides students with 2 cooked balanced meals a day. Chief Executive Officer of Stop Hunger Now, Southern Africa, Sarah Khan, now joins us in studio. Very good morning to you, ma'am, and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having us here.
How widespread is the problem of university students being hungry?
Throughout the country. It's throughout the country, and it really took us by surprise. Last year we did a little pilot with the University of Johannesburg and Wits. And what we found was that they attributed 40% of their failures to hunger. Now, one might wonder, why is a university student hungry?
Yes.
Well, often they get sponsored for their academic, for their studies, for their accommodation. But I think nobody actually looks at it holistically. And a hungry student doesn't have the energy to actually focus. If I'm hungry and if I'm traveling through to university on a daily basis, and 9 out of 10 times, there's people that are eating. How do I feel? By the time I get to university, I'm starving. Do you really think I can concentrate? No, I can't.
Let's look at the underlying reasons and the contributing factors to that. What are they?
Well, I think there's a lot of underlying reasons. I mean, poverty is the biggest one of all. The second is that we're getting rural students who come from backgrounds often where there's no parents. So they're the sole head of households.
Yes.
And some organizations, corporate South Africa, some of them do give allowances for meals and things like that. But if I've got siblings at home, 9 out of 10 times I'm sending that funding home. So I end up starving. It's the same situation with young girls that we look around and say, okay, what are they doing with these old men? Same situation. If I'm the head of the household, I don't mind demeaning myself so that I can provide for my siblings. So hunger is the root cause of so many things, and it's a disgrace for South Africa because we produce more than we can actually consume.
Yes.
And I'm not in research, but I think we've been putting this too long under the carpet. And somebody needs to do proper research and find out, why are university students hungry?
Now, you mentioned a number of issues there. One of them, of course, older men, or blessers, as some would call them. What is the impact of those blessers? Because some are saying that they're actually assisting.
Look, they may be assisting temporarily, but we have HIV/AIDS, and we've seen the rise of HIV/AIDS again in young women aged between 15 and 24. That's a problem for us as a country. It's a real issue.
Now, the assistance that you provide to the students at the universities that you're currently at, what type of assistance is that?
Well, we have a packaged meal that we don't deviate from, which comprises of rice, soya, 23 essential minerals and vitamins that Kraft Heinz Worldwide provides to all Stop Hunger worldwide, because we are in 7 countries. And the bulk, and a soup mix. And this is packaged by corporate volunteers as a team building. And we're very fortunate. Corporate South Africa really supports us in that we were able to go from 19,000 beneficiaries last year to over 55,000 beneficiaries this year. And that's excluding university students. And this is where, my heart really breaks, because we've got 60%, almost 60% of kids in university that face food poverty. And it's not something that we can ignore. Less than 4% of them actually graduate. So why are we throwing all this money into tertiary education if we're actually setting up these kids for failure by ignoring hunger?
Is there also a situation, and this is a question that has been plaguing me, that NSFAS is not really providing the students with the essentials that they would require, besides just their funding for studying? You know,
NSFAS, I think, has a huge budget, and I think a huge burden as well. I haven't really delved into it, but I have dealt with them when I was with other organizations. And I think they do all they can. But we, as South Africa, need to collectively look at what the situations are. Universities, 10 out of 10 times will employ an outside service provider who comes in and does these meals. Are they looking to actually say, hey, you know what, for what you're doing, let us give you an extra so many meals so that you can feed hungry students? No, they're not. So let's tackle all these issues. Let's sit down with everybody that is concerned in this manner of provision of food to ensure students aren't hungry, and just say, okay, I can contribute this, because we can end hunger. Yes. And I'm passionate about this.
Providing food, though, is a short-term measure.
It is a short-term measure.
What is the long-term solution?
Well, getting them educated, getting them to pass university so that they can then sustain themselves. Focusing on agriculture again, make it sexy. Nobody wants to go into farming. Why? There's a lot of money in farming. You can be highly successful. You can be exporting. You can be doing all sorts of things. So let's make farming sexy again.
Yes. Now, do you see also that the Feast Must Fall movement and the demand for free education perhaps contributing to resolve the situation that we see on our campuses where students go hungry?
No. And I'm going to be very controversial, but I'm a straight talker. It's not contributing to trying to end hunger. What it is doing is putting more students at risk, because now the universities are closed. So how do they distribute to these poor students?
And how do they pass and become
exactly
part of the workforce? So
exactly. And South Africa, yes, I do understand why they're doing it. I'm not saying the reason behind it is wrong, but I think we need to move away from the fact that we are a handout society. Okay, and education, a tertiary education, is a privilege. It's not a right. And I'm going to be thrown down for this, but I'll stand by what I say. You go to any country, I think Sweden is about the only country that actually sponsors tertiary education, but really, tertiary education is for those kids who truly deserve it and can afford it. And if you get a sponsorship, well and good. But if you don't, you know what? Move on.
50,000 people being fed right now, besides just students. Are you trying to increase that? And are you looking at other universities as well?
Absolutely, we need to increase it. Besides university students, we've got 3.1 million children under the age of 5 years facing food poverty. So yes, it's great for me to be saying, hey, we're doing 55,000 children. It's not enough. It's absolutely not enough. We need more of this. And also, if government comes on board, we don't get government funding at all. But it's about time they also came to the table. Instead of doing sporadic things, you need to make it a sustainable thing. Link it to job creation, because if we were to get more sponsors on board, we'd be able to create jobs. Because the other reality is that not everybody is a graduate. There are those people who just matriculate and can't find jobs. We can create them.
Sahira Khan, thank you so much for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you for having us.
That was Sahira Khan. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Stop Hunger Now, Southern Africa, joining us in studio. We continue this discussion, and you have to stay. Let us also know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But right now, it's over to Eben to take a look at those social media trends.
Yeah, Elvis, floods causing havoc, and of course the South African Weather Service have now warned of further severe thunderstorms in and around Gauteng later this afternoon. The warning comes after flash floods caused chaos in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni. As you can see, the pictures, flights affected. This is the highway. This is the N3 highway on your way towards the airport there. These pictures being sent in by our viewers on our social media platforms. Massive damage being caused, massive delays, and of course we've lost quite a few lives here in Johannesburg, as well as some missing persons in what was immense flooding in and around Johannesburg yesterday. So we put a poll on, and we've asked you to tell us, what do you think is at the heart of it now? Flash floods in Joburg, and straight to the point, is poor maintenance to blame? The drains were blocked, they say. That's why it flooded so badly. Why were the drains blocked? Are there people living in these drains? That's very possible here in Johannesburg. 261 votes in right now. 70% of you say, yes, poor maintenance is to blame for this. Tough stance we always take, with regards to authorities here in Johannesburg. It's a tough place. Let's take a look at some of your comments with regards to the floods and some of the unique pictures that you guys have been sending through to us and on our social media platforms with regards to the flooding. Now, Macmillan says, but how do we move from drought to flood? Climate change is real, guys. and it's Climate Summit Month. This needs to be addressed. I say collectively, Macmillan. Tracy says, we asked for the floodgates to open, and so it did. Floods. God be with our Joburg brothers and sisters, she said. Yes, lots of prayers for rain have been answered all around the country. This one from Sia says, when you pray for rain, you need to deal with the mud too. Hashtag floods, says Sia. Tsidi says, devastated by the floods that hit us, inspired by the commitment of those who helped others to safety. Yes, that's who we remember today. Tsolo Mashau says, I stand to applaud the emergency team for their selfless dedication in a time of great tragedy. Yes, we've seen some pictures come in. Here we see, oh, this is what it's all about. This is Linksfield. This is on the highway. People helping each other, cars washed away. Of course, in the middle of the night, a lot of this happened, so people didn't even see the roads were so flooded and drove straight into this. This was yesterday afternoon. There you see a man on his taxi, nice and relaxed in the middle of the N3. That's the N3 South on your way to the airport here in Johannesburg. Unbelievable scenes. But let's take a quick look at what's on our Facebook page right now. Now, the Gauteng government has confirmed that, well, it's 6 people now have been killed in floods that washed away, parts of Johannesburg yesterday. Then, President Jacob Zuma and other African leaders have congratulated President-elect Donald Trump on his election victory in the U.S. presidential elections yesterday. A gunman opened fire in downtown Seattle last night following an argument and wounded 5 people, one man critically, not far from protests over the surprise victory of Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. All of those and more on our Facebook page. You can also go to sabc.co.za/news for the latest updates. Also, polls and the like, all different kinds of content you can see on there. Now, let's quickly do a roundup around the world. Let's start in Europe. The front page of The Times reports that Donald Trump vowed to heal a stunned and divided America yesterday after his presidential election victory dealt a stinging rebuke to political establishments across the West. Then, in Iran, the Tehran Times says President Hassan Rouhani asserted yesterday that the election of Donald Trump as U.S. president will have no effect on Iran's behavior. Very interesting. Then the South China Morning Post reports that Donald Trump called for national unity and promised to work with all nations in a triumphant victory speech that capped the 70-year-old real estate mogul's election as the United States' 45th president. That's where we stand right now here on Newsroom. Of course, we're dealing with food insecurity here in Johannesburg. And with regards to Trump, we ask you, can we still trust the polls? Because Brexit, they got it wrong. The US election, they got it wrong. Even in South Africa, the polls got it wrong during our election this year. So we ask you, can we still trust, and this is it, independent is what it's called, independent polls ahead of election. Send us your tweet at SABC Newsroom. That's it. Even TB Joshua got it wrong for that matter. He withdrew his prediction that Hillary Clinton would win. Of course, he saw that in a vision, he said 10 days ago, that a woman would be the next president. Sorry, TB Joshua. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back right after this.
It was bound to be an interesting debate with Donald and Hillary, him not even having bothered to prepare. So he was flying on instinct. And it didn't come across quite well. I'm starting a hashtag, medical fees must fall. There are many students who are protesting who are not necessarily violent. The students are saying the issue is how to implement, whereas the Commission's mandate is to look at feasibility.
Yeah. Among these countries, only South Africa allows same-sex marriages. Very concerning indeed, Prof.
Your sexual orientation does not demean your own humanity, doesn't make you less of a human being. That really is the essence.
Food security, or food insecurity rather, is considered to be one of the biggest silent struggles facing tertiary institutions and students in South Africa and other parts of the world. Research conducted by the University of the Free State found that as many as 60% of the student population were food insecure and they experience hunger. Of these, up to 70% often have to borrow money for food, mostly from friends. Nearly 1 in 10 has sold belongings for food money, and 1.6% have stolen food. Several universities that include the University of the Free State, University of KwaZulu-Natal, University of Zululand and the Durban University of Technology have since introduced informal and formal programs to address student hunger on their campuses. Joining us now via Skype is Professor Frederick Veltman, who conducted research on food insecurity among university students in KwaZulu-Natal. Professor, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Professor, first and foremostly, how prevalent is food insecurity among the student population in South Africa?
Well, in general, what we have found with our research is that we would subdivide the population in food secure and versus food insecure, but then we also added an additional classification system which classifies students as severely food insecure. And in our research, we have shown recently that more than 50% of students are moderately food insecure. And then we have a small component of students of about 15 to 20% that are severely food insecure. And then we have a much smaller component of that ranges in the country between 15 to 20% students that are food secure. So the problem is really big. I think by just listening to the percentages, it's quite obvious that we are facing a crisis, and that it seems to be that all the studies nationally confirm these results. So it's not just only one institution, but it's all over the country at all the higher education institutions where these results are being confirmed by people conducting research in this field.
An obvious question then would be, Professor, that why would students be hungry if they can afford to study? That would be the obvious questions, because some would think that they do have money to study.
The problem is that the students spend most of their money to study. That's one of the things I think that's also enhancing the whole Fees Must Fall campaign is food security, because people spend so much registration fees, books, class fees. They have to buy computers. The demand in terms of studying, the financial demand is extremely high. So students literally come to study, but then they arrive at university. They live in poor conditions, and they don't have food to eat. And it becomes an impact, because what we have shown in our studies also is that, especially in the severely food insecure group, that we have a lower academic performance. You can think that someone that's hungry struggles to study and to focus on their work. So eventually those students become ill. They tend to be depressive and they are hungry all of the time, and you can't expect someone that is hungry to focus on their studies. So it's almost saying that, you know what, if we can take care of the food situation, then our students can focus on their learning, and we suspect that this is actually contributing towards the low throughput rates at our universities.
To reverse the situation, what are your recommendations from the report?
Well, a number of the institutions have food feeding schemes where they provide students with meal tickets. The problem is that those kind of feeding schemes are not sustainable because they cost a lot. The other options are NGOs that provide, for instance, food parcels to hungry students. The main issue is that usually those are the students that need to report to some form of authority to say, okay, I don't have food. And because of not victimization, but there's a level of proudness in the students that they don't want to show that. So students don't usually often make use of those programs. So the main issue is that by the time we get hold of, or we find these students that don't have access to food, that they are so severely malnourished that they end up in hospital or require medical attention. So something that would be permanent, that can provide on-campus food to students. The issue is also not only not having food, it's also about the quality of the food. We actually showed a bit of a different angle in our research. We showed that the severely food insecure students are actually overweight, and we sat and grappled with that question the whole time. And what is happening is that those that really have limited access to funding to buy food buy very unhealthy options, because the unhealthy options are the cheaper options.
I know it's a complex situation. It's a bigger problem that we've run out of time, unfortunately. We're going to discuss this some more. Professor, thank you so much for your time. That was Professor Frederick Veltman.
Yeah, food insecurity on our campuses is a massive concern right now here in South Africa. Of course, the WITS Food Bank, they pointed out a little bit earlier to us that it takes on average 400 Rand for the food bank to feed one student. There are lots of other factors, of course, at play. In the next hour, we'll continue with the discussion around food insecurity on our campuses. Of course, today we're asking you the question of the day. If you look on screen shortly, the question deals with the polls. Yes, independent polls. So we asked the question, can we still trust independent polls ahead of elections? Of course, if you remember what happened in America, Hillary was supposed to win by a landslide. Now, an Ipsos Reuters poll the day before the election said there's a 90% chance of Hillary Clinton winning this election. Of course, Brexit, they got it horribly wrong during Brexit. There were even eyebrows raised with the polls that were during the South African elections here in August this year. So we ask you, can we still trust the polls? Let's have a look at what you're telling us, what you're sending in with regards. We have lots of regular contributors here on the Newsroom show. Shiafana Zulu Show says, Newsroom, simple. Yes, we can trust the polls. But what if they get it so badly wrong? Shiafana. Then, Unati, who's a regular contributor on Newsroom. Good morning to you, Nati. He says, no, trust these days is not in my mind. He's talking about election 2016 there. This one from Ikwana Nato says, Newsroom, in most cases, these polls are incorrect, so they are unreliable. But what is the effect that they have on how people vote, or voting patterns? That's a legitimate question that we have to ask. This one from Kolani Ngwegazi. He says, Newsroom, we can't trust them. I didn't expect Donald to win these elections. I don't think the world expected it because the poll said Hillary's going to win by a landslide. Then, Lechasa, he says, Newsroom, I really can't believe what happened in the USA. Mark my word, something went wrong. Trump paid a bribe. It would have to be, it would have to be a massive bribe for that to be the case. Keep it coming. Our question today is, can you still trust independent polls when they get it so badly wrong? Of course, the question is on your screen. Send us your tweets. We'll put it up in the next hour or as we continue with the Newsroom show. Now, we're also running a poll of our own, of course, after what we saw, flash floods all over Johannesburg. We've been asking you, poor maintenance, could that be the problem? Now, 70% of the 261 votes that we have in, they say yes, it's poor maintenance. Poor maintenance is to blame. Of course, remember, you can also respond, or you can also comment on the poll itself. And we have a couple of comments on the poll coming in. But right now, after 261 votes, the poll says 70% say yes, poor maintenance is to blame. And this one from Ikona Natso, he's back on the poll as well. He says, Newsroom, yes, poor maintenance at time has a hand, but we must not ignore the disaster factor angle in these floods naturally. Thank you for that sobering view. Yes, there is an element of all of these in play. Andrew Jass, he says, Newsroom, poor maintenance. I guess that's a wake-up call for the Johannesburg municipality. This is Lechasa. He also agrees. Yes, poor maintenance. Look what happened at OR Tambo International Airport is what he is saying. Yes, keep it coming. Keep it coming. We love your interaction. That's what the show is all about. All about. Now, time for us to move on and talk a little bit of sport. Now, Kendall Mahamati is here. Now, the good news for us, Kendall, here, South Africa is that Olympic champion and world record holder Wade van Niekerk has been named as one of the 3 finalists for the 2016 IAAF World Athlete of the Year award. Now, I shake his hand because we know that he has to win. There's been no other one. No one else can claim that title. Not even the other nominees, the other 2 nominees, and that was Usain Bolt and Mo Farah of Great Britain. But how do you view this nomination?
Well, here's a big one. Let's just make sure that people understand what we're talking about here. We're talking about Wade van Niekerk, who's done what no person has ever done before. Run the 100 meters sub 10, 200 meters sub 20, and the 400 meter world record 43, just under 43 seconds, 43.03. Whereas Usain Bolt has done a triple, and Mo Farah has done a double. The 5,000 and 10,000 meters, which is exactly what these guys are the last 3 standing.
World Athlete of the Year, though, that's what's up for grabs. Now, it is the greatest prize in the sport, and the guy who's probably named World Athlete of the Year will go on to untold riches in sponsorship and the like. However, Wade van Niekerk must be favourite even ahead of Usain Bolt, simply because I think all round he's one of the great athletes of modern times.
What he's done, no person has ever done before. Yes, Usain Bolt has won at the 2008, 212 and 216, the 100, 200 and 4x100, yes. But what he's done, no person has ever been able to do. This is Wade van Niekerk we're talking about here. And you've got to remember, the very first winner was, can you guess? Carl Lewis and Flo Jo.
The great Carl Lewis, of course. Flo Jo passed away at 39, and there was lots of conjecture. Lots of conjecture
as to how and why that happened. But having said that, those are 1988 was when this award was initiated. Now, Wade van Niekerk has lit up the athletics world. He lit up the Rio Olympics with his performance. And leading up to the Rio Olympics, everybody knew to look out for the 400-meter runner from South Africa who'd beaten Kirani James, who'd beaten LaShawn Merritt, who'd been doing their personal best but not able to catch this man.
This picture, though, tells it all, because that time, you know, the Michael Johnson time that he ran, the
43.18,
it was revered as one of the iconic marks, and it stayed there for almost 20 years. 17 years. And when Wade did this, he did it in such a way that he ran in the outside lane and just blew them all away. it was probably the performance of the year in athletics.
Fully. And you know, just remembering it, I get goosebumps all over my body, just remembering how I felt in the middle of the night watching this man do this out in Rio de Janeiro. The entire country, I think, was similar to that Spiro Chabalala goal back in the World Cup 2010. When
Not in the same class. Not in the same class.
But the entire country had been looking out and rooting out for this man.
Yes.
I think maybe I'm putting it in a different space.
No,
but
this is a world star performance.
Yeah, fully world star performance, and the country stood up for this man. Yes, here's Usain Bolt. The man is a legend in his own right. He's done extremely well for himself as well as for Jamaica, making sure that he puts athletics back on the clean map, because a lot of people were complaining about athletics and how it's been dirtied and muddied by the dopers and so on and so forth. But his performances against the gays of the world, as well as the Justin Gatlins, did a lot to make athletics popular again, notwithstanding what Mo Farah has done himself.
Let's quickly talk about Caster Semenya before we pull in Tsietse Manari, who's still pulling himself together here off screen. Tsietse, I want your view on Wade van Niekerk, but first I want to ask you about Caster, because I think, in a way, Caster's been overshadowed a little bit by Wade van Niekerk, but she's also up for the nominations. When do we know what's happening there?
Well, I can tell you already that she's not shortlisted, and purely because we've got a shortlist of 3, Almaza Yana, we've got Elaine Thompson, as well as a woman from Poland, a hammer thrower, whose surname I cannot pronounce. But literally, yes, Caster did what she needed to do and won that gold and silenced a lot of critics. But she hasn't been shortlisted.
Tsietse Manari is finally ready. He's finally pulled himself towards himself. Yeah. Just quickly, before you get on with what you do, just give us your view. Wade van Niekerk is now shortlisted for the World Athlete of the Year, which is the greatest accolade in the sport there is. What is your view on that?
As a South African, obviously biased. I really want him to take it. I want him to win. But also, him as an athlete, he was superb. I think people like Usain Bolt were also looking at him and saying, wow, this is the future, and this man is just going to take over the world and do so much more amazing things to come. So I really, really think he deserves it. So,
the handing over. The handing over of the baton actually even happened at the Olympics. So let's hope that Wade van Niekerk wins the accolade, because I think there's none more deserving than him. Thanks,
the date is the 2nd of December in Monaco, where we'll find out, that night we'll find out who it is.
Yeah. Do we vote? Is there a vote?
We're done, we've voted, it's over.
Okay, there's no vote, so it is, let's hope that justice prevails done in this instance. But let's go to Tsietse Manari, who's going to give us a weather update.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. Now, you saw some serious rainfall over the northeastern parts of the country, and also some floodings in some parts. And it looks like we're expecting similar conditions again today. And there's possibilities of heavy rainfall towards KwaZulu-Natal, the northeastern parts of the Free State, as well as over the southern parts of Gauteng. From the weather map, you can see there's rain conditions expected right across the southern parts. Look at that purple patch there, and moving all the way towards the northeastern parts. And that's that's an indicator of some strong rainfall that's coming our way there. There's also possibilities of some severe thunderstorms towards KwaZulu-Natal and over the Free State province, so please do look out for those. And the rainfall mostly will be moving up towards the northwestern parts, in towards the southern parts of Angola and some parts of the northern regions of Namibia. Temperature-wise, really hot weather is expected in some parts. If you take a look at what Upington looks like at a maximum of 36 degrees, Pretoria 33, partly cloudy skies with rainy weather expected, and going down towards Mbombela, Durban, as well as just along Mlazi, do expect the really rainy conditions for today. Polokwane had a maximum of 32. Now, hot weather is expected towards the northeastern parts of southern Africa. Bulawayo, Beitbridge, those two are at around 37. Maputo's at 34. The northern parts of Madagascar also really hot. Majanga 32 degrees. Sunny skies for Windhoek at 28. And do expect some partly cloudy skies this afternoon also over Central Africa. Rainy weather from Libreville all the way towards Brazzaville and over Luanda. Kigali, Kampala and Nairobi will see isolated showers and patches of clouds towards Mogadishu and over Madagascar. So the east coast of Africa basically just expect really humid conditions and clouds. Brazzaville, that's where you should expect lots of rainfall there. Widespread showers coming up along that southern part of the DRC and going on to the Congos as well. Some clear conditions again for Lilongwe, but Dar es Salaam will see some clouds. Nairobi at a maximum of 25. Hot weather towards Bangui, and then slightly cooler for Libreville, but still steadily hot towards Kinshasa as well as Brazzaville. And for North Africa, clear, dry weather is expected there. Nothing in terms of rainfall coming up. And places such as Damascus will see temperature rise of about 28 degrees. Do you remember slightly winter conditions there? Baghdad at 22, 29 for Riyadh, and for all those in Mecca, really hot weather there, 37 degrees. Tripoli is at 22, and temperatures are slightly increasing for Benghazi with a bit of rain. Now, the city where everything is happening, Marrakesh, COP22 taking place there. It's also dry there. Temperatures are just around 22 to 23 degrees. But I've been hearing from some of my colleagues, they're saying that one day is quite sunny, and the next day really heavy rainfall coming through. So yeah, it is a bit of a mixture along those parts. Let's hope the proceedings goes well underway along those parts. Abidjan is at 30 degrees. So just a reminder, Marrakesh is being used as a way to take action now. So no more talking and planning forward. Now we must take action in sort of curbing climate change effects. That's it from the weather side. Send us your pictures, weather at sabc.co.za, and we'll talk more about this. Stay tuned. There'll be more later.
So people with prosthesis can live normal life.
Prosthesis actually manufactures the artificial limbs.
I can pick up stuff. My friends think it's awesome. I like my railway.
I can walk normally. There's nothing that I can do. It changed my life from the beginning to where I am now.
Dystrophic dysplasia is a type of dwarfism that affected all my major limbs.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
The act of travel is an eye-opening activity that not only expands your view but is a major part of any country's economy. South Africa's spectacular scenery, friendly people and world-class infrastructure make it one of the most desired destinations in the world. Despite tough global economic conditions, the tourism sector is steadily growing. But the idea that one has to go far in order to explore is quickly changing as the sector encourages local exploration. South Africa's history has been one of confrontation, but is now also known as one of reconciliation. World-class sites have been established to commemorate the country's past and celebrate its newfound unity. An area of tourism that is often overlooked is the question of the arts and tourism. Although many cities have not taken advantage of this element to attract international visitors, the domestic artistic tourism is fast becoming a key drawcard for local exploration. A-grade exhibition centers are creating modern spaces to showcase what makes up the African expression. A good dose of creative capital is playing a major role as entrepreneurs create new and exciting ways to sell their products, thus creating new vibrant local spaces that are changing the face of our communities. South Africa has earmarked tourism as a key sector with excellent potential for growth, and a vast amount is being poured into changing the face of our spaces, making them vibrant, urban, and exciting.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally.
For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
back on 10 a.m. Central African time. Very good morning to you once again. This is the Newsroom show. We've just been joined by Tsetse Munari. Of course, Kenda Mahamat is always with us. And Tsetse is here for a specific reason. We want to ask him about the flash floods and the like. But before we do that, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to do because we've been asking you a question of the day. And the question of the day, of course, after that massive upset we saw in the US elections, we ask you, can we still trust independent polls ahead of elections? Yes, we've seen it with Brexit, they got it wrong. South Africa, the elections, they got it wrong. With the Donald, they got it massively wrong, embarrassingly wrong almost. So, let's take a look at some of your tweets. What are you guys saying with regards to trusts? Siapana Zulu Show says, yes, we can trust it. Simple, to the point. Unati says, no trust these days, it's not in my mind. Oh, Unati, you're a hard man. Ikonanasu says, Newsroom, in most cases these polls are incorrect, so they are unreliable. Maybe that's something we should talk about a little bit further. Kolani Ngwekazi says, we can't trust them. I didn't expect Donald to win these elections, and you are not the only one, Kolani. Then Lechasa says, I really can't believe what happened in the USA. Mark my words, something went wrong. Trump paid a bribe. Not everything can be laid at the hands of a bribe. I think the US election, it's maybe a little bit different. But of course, we're running our own poll every day on the Newsroom show where we want you to interact with us. And this is why Tsetse is here. Tsetse, we say, flash floods in Joburg. It's a tough question to ask, but we ask our viewers, is poor maintenance to blame? 70% say yes. What do you say?
I would also linger on saying yes, because I mean, it's not the first time we see that our stormwater systems are not really that effective.
Yeah.
And disaster management departments have been talking about getting it sorted and getting it fixed, and also warning people in time. But I also think it is about time. It's supposed to be right. It's supposed to be working properly now.
So it is an act of God that caused this, as we call it. But we have to maintain our stormwater drainage, and we have to make sure that our maintenance is up to date. What about people living in sort of, or settling in these sort of areas?
Yeah, low-lying areas also a very dangerous situation. In South Africa and here in Gauteng specifically, you've got lots of hills and lots of dips. And, people also need to take heed of these warnings. Yeah. We issue them out every single day and say something could be happening. So please, if you're in a low-lying area, or if you're in a 50-year floodplain, you are guaranteed this is going to flood.
Tsetse, just hang around. I want to talk to you a little bit more in the news element. Just take a look at your comments to the poll question. Poor maintenance. What do you think? Is poor maintenance to blame? This one comes from Jimmy. He says, true, always construction, but I've never seen them dealing with drainage. Before rains, drainages must be cleared. It kind of sounds like common sense, doesn't it? Ayanda Majola says, Newsroom, poor drainage system design is to be blamed.
Certainly.
Says Ayanda, this one from Ikonana. So he says, yes, poor maintenance at times has a hand, but we must not ignore the disaster factor angle in these floods naturally. Yeah. Yes. Then Andrew Just says, poor maintenance. I guess that's a wake-up call for the Johannesburg municipality. Yes, indeed, it is. It is a wake-up call for the Johannesburg municipality. I'll be talking to Tsetse shortly about the wider implications of this, but let's first take a look at our news headlines. President Jacob Zuma is expected to face yet another no-confidence vote in Parliament this afternoon. The South African Weather Service warns of further severe thunderstorms in Gauteng today, with yesterday's flash floods having claimed a number of lives. Thousands of people take to the streets across the United States in protest against some of the U.S. President-elect's views on immigrants. Those are our top stories. Let's go over to Kendall to see what's happening in the world of sport.
Evan, talking about Donald Trump and so on and so forth, somebody on the radio this morning said they heard he's building a wall and they want to put in a tender. So, good morning to you. This is what else is happening in the sports today.
0-3. It was as if he had wings on his heels in the last 50 metres.
Olympic champion and world record holder Wade van Niekerk has been named as one of the 3 shortlisted finalists for the 2016 IAAF World Athlete of the Year award.
On the tee from South Africa, George Coetzee.
Africa's major, the Nedbank Golf Challenge, teed off this morning with some of the creme de la creme of the golfing world, lining up to take the $1.16 million winner's check.
It's going to be a challenging match for us as well because it's a team that also participated in the Olympic Games.
And Banyana play the mighty Warriors of Zimbabwe in their last friendly match ahead of the 2016 edition of the CAF African Cup of Nations. All this and more we'll be bringing to you at about 10:40 or so. But for now, it is back to Eben and Tia.
Yeah, thank you very much to Kendall. He'll be back in about half an hour's time to give us a complete roundup from the world of sport. Of course, lots happening. We're looking forward to another test match over the weekend in Australia. There's one currently on in India as well. But our top story right now, Johannesburg's emergency services will resume their search, or have resumed their search, for more victims or possible victims of yesterday evening's flash floods in Gauteng. 2 people were confirmed dead along the N3 highway in the Linksfield area when around 150 vehicles were trapped in a wave of water during peak hour traffic. At least 6 people were in danger of drowning when they were rescued, and many motorists were treated for minor injuries on the scene. Also in Johannesburg, a boundary wall collapsed at the Johannesburg Zoo following a heavy downpour, and the zoo remains closed indefinitely now. Management says no people or animals were hurt. The flooding also affected flights at the OR Tambo International Airport, and a number had to be diverted to other airports. Now, to talk a little bit more about the storm that wreaked havoc here in Gauteng, Tete Manaria, our resident meteorologist, is with us in studio. He's stayed there. He's managed to hang around here for us. Tete, thanks for hanging around, my friend. But it's very concerning, this flash flood. Of course, we prayed for rain now for weeks, and it seemed we got all the rain in one day.
Yeah. I actually received, a part of the 1,000 calls I received this morning. One guy called me and he said, you know, just about a few days ago, there was a meeting and a caucus, and they were praying for rainfall. Now the rainfall comes, are we going to now pray for a bit of drought? So I said, I had to explain it. I said, no, that's not my department when it comes to praying for rainfall. Yes. And so on. I do the rain dance. That's the
you're not good in the. But no, yeah, just quickly, this storm. What kind of storm was this? And is it a kind of common thing at this time of the year? I don't know.
It's not that common, but it's also not very rare. I mean, we've seen storms like this develop. It's basically a thunderstorm that just developed as a line storm.
A line storm. What is that?
A line storm. Now, it's actually very, very long to discuss, and hopefully I can come back later and talk to you about that.
Okay, come back later and bring us some examples of a line storm and the like. But tell us about how common this is, where did the storm develop, and will it happen again?
Yeah, in South Africa, yes, it is quite common. We've seen them. Sometimes they do develop, but then they just don't materialize. They don't become as strong as the one that we had yesterday. This one specifically developed just over the southeastern part of the country, from around about Kroonstad and Bloemfontein, those regions in the Bloemfontein, in the Free State region. Yeah, and it moves. It also comes because of this high pressure system over the northern part of Namibia, and also the northern part of the Northern Cape Province. And it's in this anticyclonic movement. So it leads all that wind moving towards the eastern side of the country. And when that develops and it becomes as strong as the one that happened because of the heat that also we've been experiencing. And it just keeps fueling itself. So it's almost like a self-fueling storm that carries on. The hotter it gets, the more air rises, and it becomes stronger and stronger, lightning and heavy rainfall. So that's basically what happened yesterday.
Now, it's also been very hot around Gauteng. Does that tap into this? And also, after droughts or after extended droughts, are floods like these, are they quite common?
Yeah, the thing is, in our case, yes, it's been quite dry. And when the thing with thunderstorms is that they happen so rapid and so fast, and they come so strong, there isn't time for water to actually sink in. It just comes in and then it walks, it just rolls over the surface again. And the place where it happened, the concrete jungle here in Gauteng, we have a lot of trees, yes, but we don't really have a lot of open space. Everything is so developed here. There's lots of concrete, so there isn't enough space for the water to get drenched in. And so that's what happened with our roads as well. And also we have these low-lying regions sort of dips just along, our surface, and that holds the water in cases like this, like storm of yesterday. So yeah, but associating it with a drought is a little bit more difficult because droughts come in and then they just stay, and it becomes really, really dry. But then droughts also come with high temperatures, and high temperatures lead to this convection sort of movement of air rising really fast, and then it leads to instability, and you get hailstorms. I mean, we are not, strangers to hailstorm, and there was a bit of hail as well yesterday. So that's what happened as well. And it's just that the rain was built up and it came a lot faster.
What should we do to manage this kind of thing a little bit better? We saw on some of the tweets that our viewers are sending us in, they say, surely before we know when the rains are going to come, or just about when the rains are going to come, surely the maintenance, or there should be a maintenance plan ahead of us so that we don't get to these kinds of scenarios. Is that common sense?
One of the tweets mentioned about how there's always development here. Roads are being built, like the bus system that's now being implemented, and also development. But we never really focus on stormwater system. And also, it's already in place. It's just that it needs to be managed. It needs to be cleared. It needs to be made sure that there isn't grass and dirt and, rubble that's just blocking it. Because the blocking of that, even in a small town such as De La Revel, there's dirt and there's litter all over the place, and that blocks all the stormwater systems like the sewage pipes and so on, and that's what's leading to water packing up or just not going into the systems and just flooding the roads. So it needs to be managed properly.
Now, of course, you and all your colleagues are telling us, ignore the pictures on the screen because the drought is still in full effect. How do we convince people now that we still have a drought and they shouldn't be filling their pools in the middle of the day and so forth when these are the pictures?
Yes, if you call anyone right now from, let's say, Kakamas or Kemus in the Northern Cape Province, they probably haven't seen rainfall. It's very dry there. If
but for their whole lives.
that as well. But as we forecast earlier on, we said there are areas that could receive a lot more rainfall than usual, or will be wetter than usual for this time of the year. But those areas are areas that are used to rainfall, like in KwaZulu-Natal. Ever since we've been talking about the drought, it actually has been raining in KZN and some parts of the Free State as well as some parts of here in Gauteng. But the drought is not over because the Val Dam is still not back to its capacity yet, and most of our catchment areas as well. And that's what we need. We need that to be filled up. We do not need flash floods like this that will come and go. Because once again, once this is over, once this week is gone again, we'll be basically back to a dry situation, and then the water will be gone again.
Almost unbelievable. That water will just wash away. But now there's more floods or more rain expected this afternoon in Gauteng. Just tell us quickly, what is the outlook for today? And in that, if you can maybe tell us also what you think people should do when they're on the roads and what they should do at home.
Yeah, there is definitely more rainfall coming. The forecast for today, in fact, shows an even bigger chance of rainfall as yesterday. And that's what we saw from the beginning of the week, that this whole week up until around Saturday, Sunday, there's more rainfall to come. So please, what you need to do is be extra vigilant. Wherever you go, whatever you do, just make sure that you are protected and just expect about anything, especially if you are planning a long trip, or for all those that are planning on leaving from around 4:30 between 4:30 and 6. That's when you also receive the rainfall, around this time of the year. So please just make sure. I would say don't go to work, but I cannot.
So it's kind of what you call it's a peak hour thing. These floods, right?
Yeah, it's a peak hour thing. So have your buckets ready around that time, so that you can also collect the water at the same time. So that's what we basically need to do.
Tsetse, thank you very much for coming in. Of course, I've asked Tsetse to come back a little bit later. He's going to come back and show us what a line storm looks like and what it really is. I look forward to seeing that a little bit later this hour. He'll be back. So if you want to see what a line storm is, what it looks like, he'll also bring us some examples here into the studio to talk about the storm that rocked Johannesburg yesterday. Of course, a bit earlier, we spoke to Wayne Minnar on the flood situation here in Gauteng and surrounds.
The damage was had been caused mainly by the water, but I can say this moment is that the bridges itself wasn't affected, so the traffic is able to flow this morning. However, there is still mud on the road surface.
Is there any road closures?
No, there are no road closures this morning. However, the rescue teams have gone into the areas to search for more possible victims.
Now, Mr. Mona, what advice can you give to motorists when it comes to driving in floods and like we've seen yesterday here in Johannesburg?
Look, what I want to strongly advise anybody is not to drive through water or to drive through a road which appears to be flooded. Rather use an alternative route or, if possible, make a U-turn and take another road.
Well, that was a little bit earlier, of course. If you see the storm, don't drive into the storm is common sense. But that's where we wrap that look at the weather and the effects it had here in South Africa. Let's now take a look at the other top story, of course. President Jacob Zuma is facing another no-confidence vote in Parliament later today. The motion follows the release of the former public protector's State of Capture report. Democratic Alliance leader Musi Maimane says his party's call for the motion will give ANC MPs the opportunity to continue supporting President Zuma's continued disrespect for the Constitution or come out in favour of the country's development, he says. ANC Chief Whip Jackson Ntembu has described the motion as frivolous, saying the DA's calls for motions of no confidence are founded on spurious allegations and narrow political motives. The no-confidence vote will be the third in under a year, with the first two easily defeated by the ANC's majority in Parliament. The Democratic Alliance has reclaimed control of the Gatelopele municipality at Danielskuil in the Northern Cape. The ward was left vacant when the DA's councillor-elect Johannes Baaki was killed in an alleged political attack before he could be sworn in after the August local government elections. 2 local ANC members and 4 others were arrested on murder charges and they remain in custody. The DA and the Gatelopele Community Forum have formed a coalition to govern the municipality. Meanwhile, in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, the ANC retained Ward 14 after it was left vacant following the murder of its councillor Neba Duwili, who was gunned down shortly before the resumption of voting in the local government elections. Dolly Booty is the new ward councillor in the area, winning 54% of the vote there. Ward 14 was won by Ayanda Jokwana. Now, we'll be crossing to Mlungisi Kumalo a little bit later for an update on yesterday's by-election. So don't miss that at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock. Now, remaining with our theme today, which focuses on food insecurity amongst the country's universities. One of the solutions offered for this problem is for students to adapt a culture of saving. Now, the South African Savings Institute, SASI, is an independent non-profit organisation dedicated to developing a robust culture of saving in South Africa. Now, very good morning to you. I'm with Gerald Mwandi-Ambira. How are you today? So nice to have you with us. From the South African Savings Institute, the CEO.
Morning, and good morning to all the viewers.
Now, great to have you with us. You've seen the scenarios playing out on our campuses with regards to food insecurity, students going hungry. Some reports say up to 60% of our students could at times face hunger. For someone like yourself, that must be very concerning.
Indeed, it is very concerning. I think what the South African Savings Institute does try to do is to encourage the habit of saving as early as possible. And obviously, universities and TVET colleges are a prime area. We need to have this habit set in people. Now, obviously, one of the things when people think savings is that you think of the quantum, that how much do I have left? But it's not always about that. It's about your thought process in how do you consume, how do you spend. So we are cognizant of the fact that times are hard. Students are protesting, fees must fall. And the reality is many students don't actually have much to save, but they can start the behavior of just being aware of where they can save.
How do we change this mindset? Because it's not just the students in South Africa, it's everybody in South Africa. We're very bad at saving, but how do we get young people, especially, to make that shift?
I think with young people it's a bit easier because young people, especially in tertiary institutions, are in a learning environment. So they're used to consuming new information and learning. So for many who encounter this information for the first time, before they're in debt, before they're working, they can start doing the right behavior which can help them in the future. And often when students are doing these things, it also rubs on to the families as well as their parents, etc., and the extended family construct. So we need to talk to the students because they need to know that saving is not just about a pile of money left behind. It's about the thought process. Before I spend the money, before I even receive the money, have I thought it through? What can I do? Where can I save? And also, are there any opportunities on campus for me to earn a living or earn extra money? I know a lot of students I've spoken to cut hair, do other students' hair, and do odd little jobs just to earn that extra living. And I think it's that sense of ownership of your finances which is important, because we don't want this sweeping attitude of entitlement to consume everyone, because if you're used to just being entitled, you never actually really stop and save.
There's a couple of things that are concerning that's come out of the studies. One is a blessers culture that's developed on our campuses where sugar daddies, for those watching internationally, sugar daddies, they pay for the food, and students then go on and spend their money on other things, spend their money on clothes, spend their money on good times, alcohol and the likes. How do you defeat that? Because it seems to be a very ingrained thing.
I think it's a social problem which we're facing, because as much as we look at the students, it goes back to their homes in terms of the homes they come from and the general social construct of South Africa right now, in that we have a sense of entitlement. We have this thing that if I can't have it, I must take it from somewhere. And we need to start putting the brakes on that kind of behavior. And yes, students will do whatever they need if they feel they want to fit in. It's about getting students to understand that it's okay for you to lack now and again. You don't have to have. But right now, because the parents feel that they have to have, the students feel that they have to have, their children feel that they have to have, and that's what's happening in the country. Everyone has to have, and no one is saving.
We live in the time, though, of materialism, of consumerism. We live in the time where you have to flash your money and you have to show your wealth, especially here in South Africa amongst young people. The thing that's concerning is that you have to go out there and show who you are and show what you have. That in itself is an ingrained problem that we have to address, I suppose, as a society.
I think it's also historical. You have to consider South Africa's history, that we come from an apartheid background where many blacks never enjoyed some of these luxuries. So we entered democracy and people started enjoying things they'd never had before. But now we need to start realizing that these things are accessible. We need to start realizing that it can be worked for. And also the media doesn't help, because we also portray on media constantly that you have to have the latest bling thing. And we need to start getting back to basics, going back to where we say, let's start working. Our campaign this year is #needs and wants. #needs and wants. We just want people to start realizing, what do you need versus what you want?
Now, tell us quickly about the initiatives your organization is involved with young people, but with all South Africans, to get us to understand we need to manage our money a little bit better.
#needs and wants is part of our festive season campaign, where generally we get South Africans to say, it is the festive season. Enjoy yourself, but do it wisely. Do it with a bit of thought behind it. So know what you need versus what you want, knowing that 2017 is coming. We have the Varsity TVET College, where we try and reach 650,000 students a year. If you're a funder out there, contact SASI. We want to do this big, because if we focus on the youth, we secure our future. There's a lot of adults out there who are really in a tough situation, who we can't help as much. But the youth are a blank page, and often if they start doing the right things when they start working, they make it in life.
Now, Gerald, we have a lot of students watch the show. They always tweet us because of fees must fall, and sometimes they're very critical of me. But those students who are watching there right now, if you could give them one piece of advice, one gold nugget to take with them from this experience today.
I think all students should realize that the fact that you've made it to tertiary means that you have succeeded. Remember that when you're in a tertiary institution, all of you are equal. Do not measure yourself by where you're coming from. Measure yourself by where you want to be. Set goals in life. That is part of budgeting. That is part of life planning. If you have a plan with goals, which doesn't include blessers, you will make it. And there are many people who can testify to that.
Gerald, thank you for coming in today. That's the CEO of the South African Savings Institute, Gerald Mwanyambera, telling us that you should save and you can save, and that we all should change the way we behave, especially young people. We can't be hungry. We have to prioritize the basics in our life. Gerald, thanks for coming in today and sharing your experience and, of course, some of the initiatives that you guys are busy with are fantastic. Thank you once again.
Always a pleasure.
Now we move on. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has just congratulated U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. He was speaking at the United Nations in New York ahead of Hillary Clinton's concession speech at the hotel in the same city.
Mr. Donald Trump on his election as 45th President of the United States of America. In the aftermath of hard-fought and often divisive campaign, it is worth recalling and reaffirming that unity in diversity of the United States is one of the country's greatest strengths. I encourage all Americans to stay true to that spirit. Today's global challenges demand concerted global action and joint solutions. As a founding member of the United Nations and Security Council permanent members of the Security Council, the United States is an essential actor across the international agenda. People everywhere look to the United States to use its remarkable power to help lift humanity up and to work for the common good. The United Nations will count on the new administration to strengthen the bonds of international cooperation as we strive together to uphold the shared ideals, combat climate change, advance human rights, promote mutual understanding, and implement the Sustainable Development Goals to achieve lives of peace, prosperity, and dignity for all. Now more than ever, we must mobilize around the principles and common values of the United Nations Charter. I would also like to express my deep appreciation to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for a lifetime commitment to peace, the advancement of women, and the well-being of children. She has been a powerful global symbol of women's empowerment, and I have no doubt that she will continue to contribute to our work across the world.
Meanwhile, climate experts meeting in Morocco for this year's climate change conference say Trump has a moral responsibility to honour the Paris Climate Agreement. Trump has expressed doubts about global warming and has said he would cancel the deal if elected. Of course, outgoing President Barack Obama's administration has pledged to reduce U.S. greenhouse gas emissions, but Republicans argue it'll work against the U.S. economy. Of course, it's taking place. COP22 is taking place in Marrakesh. Now, while all of this has been going on, thousands of people have protested across the United States against Trump, blasting his campaign rhetoric around immigrants, Muslims, and other groups. In Chicago, over 1,000 people gathered outside the Trump International Hotel and Tower to vent their anger. This as New York saw thousands of protesters filling the streets as they made their way to Trump Tower, which is the president-elect's home. Hundreds also gathered in Philadelphia, Boston, and Seattle. U.S. President Barack Obama will host President-elect Donald Trump in the Oval Office today. They will be hoping to ease a smooth transition of power and steady nerves after an election that has shocked the world. Defeated presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has offered to work with Trump on behalf of the country. In an emotional speech after an unexpected night in New York, the first woman to head a major political party in a U.S. presidential election also apologized to her supporters.
An emotional Clinton said she hoped President-elect Trump would be a successful leader for all Americans as the heartbreak of defeat for herself, her family and supporters began to set in.
I know how disappointed you feel because I feel it too. And so do tens of millions of Americans who invested their hopes and dreams in this effort. This is painful, and it will be for a long time. But I want you to remember this. Our campaign was never about one person or even one election. It was about the country we love and about building an America that's hopeful, inclusive, and big-hearted. We have seen that our nation is more deeply divided than we thought. But I still believe in America, and I always will. And if you do, then we must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead. Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power.
President Barack Obama also congratulated the New York businessman while pledging to work towards a smooth transition of power.
I have instructed my team to follow the example that President Bush's team set 8 years ago and work as hard as we can to make sure that this is a successful transition for the president-elect. Because we are now all rooting for his success in uniting and leading the country.
As the historic nature of Clinton's candidacy failing to scale the final hurdle, devastating legions of women in particular who had supported her.
This for me was an important moment, and also for the women of the world, because through her candidature we had an opportunity to lift the aspirations of many women in many parts of the world and take the road to gender equality just in the US and out of the US. We have missed a significant historic opportunity.
Outside Trump headquarters in New York, a question about what his surprising victory could mean for Africa.
Well, he's already addressed those issues, and he will in the coming days. But I would ask the people of South Africa a question back to them. Name one or two things that you think went really great while Barack Obama was the president. What happened in South Africa? What happened to our relations that you would point to and say that really needs to continue?
Trump's four-year term begins on January 20th when he takes the oath of office in Washington. Shervin Briceby's SABC News, New York.
Now, the victory of Donald Trump in the U.S. presidential election has come as a surprise for many around the world. Outspoken and often brash, Trump has caused many to wonder what the world with him in the White House would be like. Among those concerned are South Africans and Africans at large. Now, earlier, Professor John Stremlau from Wits University's Department of International Relations spoke to SABC News about how U.S.-Africa relations could change under Donald Trump.
Things always change. It's a little early to know because Trump doesn't have any identifiable African advisors. He showed very little interest in the continent during the campaign or foreign affairs generally. As I say, he's going to be preoccupied domestically. But I think it's a good time for South Africans to take stock both of what this election means in terms of the popular protest that was thrown out there at the grassroots against the distant central government. You know, the kind of protests that were evident here in the August elections were very much grounded in real issues of concern to citizens in communities of service delivery, not some abstraction. So that this election is going to set an example in the United States, perhaps a bad example, that I think South Africans ought to digest. But then there are questions of economic trade, the future of AGOA, whether or not Obama's climate change protocol, which is very, very important to South Africa, given the double rate of global warming down here, gets implemented and upheld. Trump has threatened to erase all this protocol with the Paris Agreement on the books that Obama signed, and he can do that as executive action. So pressure on Trump to accept where the international community is going on climate change is terribly important for South Africa.
Yeah.
So there are many aspects of this, but that'll take time to sort that out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, also, you know, one thing that Trump has said from the beginning of his campaign, until
until yesterday was that he is putting America first. He's a businessman, and we know that about Trump. He's a billionaire. If it doesn't work for America, that's the end of that. And that's why when you look at acts like AGOA and you look at relations with Africa, as you said, he hasn't really even focused on it. I don't even think he's ever spoken about it. The only time he spoke about it with South Africa was in a tweet saying that we are... let me quote the tweet. He said, Nelson Mandela and myself had a wonderful relationship. He was a special man. He'll be missed. I really like Nelson Mandela, but South Africa is a crime-ridden mess that is just waiting to explode. Not a good situation for the people. I think that's the only words he's ever said about South Africa.
I think that's probably correct, and I think it reflects the limited knowledge that he has of any reality. And I know a journalist, African-American, Charlotte Herr-Galt, who's just written for The New Yorker about the South Africa-U.S. relationship, and says that this is an interdependent one. We have to learn from our struggles for human rights from each other. And so this is going to be a testing time in U.S.-South Africa relations, as you suggest.
On the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court believes the plight of victims of atrocity aren't part of the debates that criticize the court. In an exclusive interview with SABC News in New York, Fatou Bensouda argued that the inner workings of the court are not well known, allowing a breeding ground for criticism of the institution to flourish.
One of the challenges that we find is that the court is not known. How the court is working is not known. What are the limitations of jurisdiction of the court? And it is very easy for the naysayers to fill this void and start giving a wrong story of what the ICC is all about. It's unfortunate. But as I said, we will do what we can. We will continue to put the word out there of how important this institution is and how this institution was set up. Really, I always say, the raison d'etre for creating the ICC is because of the victims who ordinarily will not have justice, because usually those who are supposed to rule them are the ones who are committing the crimes against them, and to find justice at home is very, very difficult. But that there is an institution that they are part of that will independently come in, investigate and prosecute, and that they should have hope in this institution. So this is a story that really should be known out there, because another unfortunate thing is in this whole debate about the ICC and the criticisms against the ICC, the aspect that is missing is about the victims of these crimes. No one talks about them. And these victims, I continue to say, in the cases that we have in Africa, they are also African victims. They deserve justice. In the absence of ICC, who is giving it to them?
Time now for us to take a quick look around the front pages from the African continent. Now we'll start in Zimbabwe this morning. The Herald reports that ZANU-PF members should solve their differences through appropriate organs of the party and not private and social media. This, according to President Robert Mugabe. Then in Kenya, The Star says Deputy President William Ruto has defended himself against accusations of land grabbing, involvement in extrajudicial killings, and the murder of anti-government whistleblower Jacob Zuma. Finally, Namibia. The Namibian reports that the provisions in the new Equitable Economic Empowerment Framework draft bill, which will have white businesses sell a mandatory 25% shares to black people, can be reconsidered. Those are some of the front pages around the African continent. We're going to take a short little break. Newsroom will be back with more right after this.
Macro is going big on festive season savings by bringing you cooking deals like the Brabrantia 7-piece stainless steel cookware set, only 1199, save 300 Rand. We're mixing things up. With a Russell Hobbs jug blender for only $5.99, save 300 Rand and save 500 Rand on the Russell Hobbs Legacy Breakfast Pack, now only $9.99. Share in these and other big festive savings for home, for business, for life. Only at Macro, big on life.
News Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge. Breaking stories and crossing live for you. We follow business developments intensely. Experts and analysts tackle all challenging issues for you. We cover stories locally and abroad to keep you informed. We cover all sporting codes just for you. We are sure to give you weather to be ready for the day. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Welcome back. It's still a newsroom here on SABC News. Now, a total of 113 children have died of malnutrition in Gauteng in the period April 2015 to March this year. This, according to figures disclosed by Gauteng Health MEC Kedani Matlangu at a Gauteng Legislature Health Committee meeting held in public at Orange Farm. There are also over 3,000 new cases of severe malnutrition, with over 1,500 admissions and more than 100 deaths due to severe acute malnutrition. This has prompted the Gauteng Health Department to announce a rollout plan to tackle malnutrition amongst children in the province. Now, the head of Gauteng's Health Department, Dr. Bani Selebano, is in studio with us to give us an update on what is going on. A very good morning to you, Dr. Selebano. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad I'm here.
This is very concerning for us. 113 children dying of malnutrition in Gauteng. How do you view this?
Yeah, listen, I mean, any death, even if it was one, would still be very unhappy, because it's very difficult to explain death. No one child, no one person should die, particularly if you even die of malnutrition. It's a painful and a slow death. But the annual report was talking to those things, to the public, to say this is what we're doing. It doesn't tell you at least what we've been doing before, you see.
Yeah. Now, you, with this in mind, what's been happening now, you've put together a complete rollout plan to tackle the problem of malnutrition. Just talk to us about this plan.
Yeah. Let me explain something first. You see, the health system will pick up what has gone wrong in society, if you understand what I'm saying. What happens is that our country has a big problem of HIV. That's where the problem starts, and we pick it up with a lot of children. We have won the war really on PMTC, where now less kids now are getting transmission from their parents. But however, the rollout plan is going to also go out to say to mothers, if you are pregnant, just even at 20 weeks, come to the hospital so that we can assess you. But there are things that we can also do. We can do early prevention, early detection. We can improve on immunization. And these are critical things. These are things that you can't touch, but they're real. We do them. We do them.
Now, the MEC, he's admitted that malnutrition cases are actually on the rise here in the province. With that statistic coming from the MEC himself, what is the plan then to arrest that slide?
You know, the difficulty of being in Gauteng is the inward migration.
Yeah.
They say we are the richest, but we actually inherit even the biggest problems. So, when the MEC was talking about that number and that we are rolling out a plan, here we are saying that when people see hospitals, they think that is where we must solve the problem.
Yeah.
The actual problem is that community-based.
Yeah.
That is where we must start and say, how do we pick up this thing? And we must also work with our sister department, social development. Unless we have a good working relationship, which we are having now with social development, we will talk. I'll come back again a year later and you're still asking me about the numbers.
You mentioned that hospital is not the place to go to deal with this problem.
The route.
When you look at this, what kind of infrastructure, facilities, or support do you need in order to deal with this problem?
You see, malnutrition, you must understand what it means. It shows you the problems in society. It shows you unemployment. It shows you lack of socio-economic opportunities. It shows you issues, we call them social determinants of health. Yeah. Those things that impact on health before the hospital. You see, the hospital, more than anything, is the last part.
Yeah.
Is the last part. So when people, like I was saying, when you see a huge hospital like Charlotte Maxeke, you think, we'll solve the problem of malnutrition there. No. It starts there. How we educate our own, how do we make sure that people have food, how do we ensure that, especially simple things like breastfeeding. Yeah. Mothers must breastfeed. Mothers who are HIV positive must take medication. But the devastation is not caused only by that. Remember, when you see, and we must always remember that HIV/AIDS has had an impact on a lot of things here. So when a family loses a breadwinner, the impact is huge. Yeah. So these are things that it's a value chain. And that's what I'm saying to you, that the community has to get involved in this.
What about schools? We see the kind of feeding schemes we have at schools and the like. Some of the concerns that have been raised with me on the show have been that the tender processes for these schools often means that the lowest quality is what reaches the children. How do you view that kind of thing?
No. I think we've got what we call a school health program. No. It's not true. I can swear that. You see, also, we must understand what is malnutrition is bad food. Pap and potato. You're practically eating the same thing. No protein, no nothing inside there. The school health program that we do with education, and I don't want to talk for education, please remember that. Yeah. But I know that they give nutritionally sufficient food. Your proteins are inside there, your calories are inside there, levels of fats are inside there. So sometimes people...
Is there no better way for us to look to feed our children than to put it out to tender? Because we know how tenders work.
You're being... Listen, maybe if you want to suggest a better way, you can do that. But the education people will have to answer this one. I don't want to answer that one. But I'm sure really... It's sad for people who work very hard and, you know, and those little mouths that every day depend on that. When they hear that some people are saying they're unhappy because of one process or the other, then they disparage that. It's a bit unfair. But I can tell you those mouths every day. When I grew up, it used to be malibase. We used to eat malibase. And it's much improved.
Families at risk, finally. How are you going to how do you identify families at risk? Because it's sort of the food chain, if you can call it that, kind of connects like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. What we are doing now, and we do, you see, I'm saying it to you, but we do it every time. Once we pick up that there's a family at risk, we then combine our forces with social development. That's what I called early detection. So we detect them early. We have a cohort of community health workers. They go out there in the community and they tell us there's a family at risk. The mother is not working, the mother is sick, the kids, and we pick it up also at school. So we have had a three-way meeting now with education, social development, and ourselves to say we need to jack up. But you see, and I'm saying it's important, the inward migration in Gauteng is a problem.
Dr. Selabana, thank you for coming in and asking what are quite candid, answering what are quite candid questions I've asked you this morning. Thanks for coming in and being so frank with us. That's the head of Gauteng's Health Department, Dr. Bani Selabana, joining us in the studio to talk about, well, malnutrition problems that continue to plague the problems. But you've heard it from the horse's mouth, as it were. Thank you. Thanks, Doc. Thanks for coming in and well, answering the tough questions. Right now, we're going to go over to Kendall for a complete sports update.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eben. We start off our sports bulletin talking about Olympic champion and world record holder Wade van Niekerk, who's been named as one of the 3 finalists that have been shortlisted for the 2016 IAAF World Athlete of the Year award. Van Niekerk will be up against Jamaican Usain Bolt and Mo Farah of Great Britain in the men's category. Meanwhile, Olympic gold medalist Caster Semenya missed out on the final shortlist of 3 in the women's category. The winners will be announced at the IAAF Awards night in Monaco on the 2nd of December.
Wade van Niekerk is in line to become the first South African male athlete to win the IAAF World Athlete of the Year award, and only the second in South African history since History Kloot, who won the award in the women's category back in 2003. The 24-year-old Stellenbosch-born is no stranger to changing the course of history. In the 15th IAAF World Athletics Championships in Beijing last year, Van Niekerk won his maiden World Championship title in style, becoming the 4th fastest man in the history of 400 meters. The South African did not stop there, carrying his 2015 form to 2016, going on to become the first man to complete 100, 200 and 400 meters in under 10, 20 and 44 seconds respectively. As if that was not enough, Van Niekerk went on to clinch his first Olympic gold medal in the 400 meters. Van Niekerk did not just win gold, but he shattered the world and Olympic record with a time of 43.03 seconds, beating legendary Michael Johnson's 17-year-old record in the process. Joseph Mohale, SABC News.
Now, Africa's major, the Nedbank Golf Challenge, teed off this morning with some of South Africa's top golfers hoping to emulate Trevor Immelman's feat back in 2007. In the lead right now is George Coetzee in an 8-way tie for first. Now, off the South Africans, Jaco van Zyl teed off first just before 9 in the morning, followed by George Coetzee himself, who was on 3 under. Now, Coetzee has got 3 European Tour titles to his name. And of course, Richard Sterney and Charles Schwartzel followed an hour later. Still to tee off, our top-ranked South Africans, Brendan Grace and Louis Westhuizen. Now, the South African national football team wants to end the year on a high by winning their final home match of 2016 this coming Saturday. Bafana need a positive result against Senegal to keep their hopes alive of qualifying for the 2018 World Cup in Russia. A win against informed Senegal will take Bafana to the top of Group D.
The match against Senegal is now a must-win for Bafana after they gave away a slender lead against Burkina Faso in Ouagadougou last month. But the home side do not have a good home record in the qualifiers. South Africa will not be at the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Gabon after failing to win a single qualifier at home. Bafana through to Minos, Gambia and Mauritania, as well as eventual Group M winners Cameroon, to finish third in their group.
I think it's the last game for this year up until we play again next year. So we're going to end up sitting well in a group stage, in a log. So we will try our best as players. Like I said, we know how important it is and we know who we're facing. So as a team, we're ready for the challenge.
Were in action for their respective clubs this past weekend, and coach Shakes Mashaba will have to manage the players properly leading up to the crucial match.
We traveled on Monday. We got here Monday afternoon. That's why we didn't train. We said, no, let's give them a free afternoon. And when we talk about a free afternoon, it's not people going in the mall or what. They've got to go sleep. Keep those legs off the ground as much as you can so that circulation starts from scratch.
Mashaba says his boys are capable of scoring first to unsettle the highly rated Senegalese side.
If you look at the AFCON game, you're talking about 2015. I mean, if you look at all 3 games in the group stages that we played, first half were fireworks. In all 3 games, we scored first.
Senegal are currently top of the group with 3 points, with South Africa and Burkina Faso tied second with a point each. Sfeso Ramara, SABC News.
Now, the latest news coming out of camp, though, is that Bafana duo, Tebogo Langerman as well as Dean Furman, have been withdrawn from the national squad due to injury. Now, staying with our national football team news, Banyana are expecting a tough match against Zimbabwe today in their last international friendly match ahead of the 2016 edition of the CAF African Cup of Nations for Women. The game represents an opportunity to grow some of the new team members.
We know that it's going to be a challenging match for us as well, because it's a team that also participated in the Olympic Games. So it will be a great encounter, and especially for the young ones that hopefully will get their first match prior to AWC coming up, for them to get a taste of the pressure, what it feels like, especially away from home. So the team is gelling really nicely. We're working well together. Everyone is really excited, looking forward to the tournament.
Headlines just yesterday were flash floods all over the eastern part of Johannesburg, and that's exactly why Eben and Tsietsi are about to chat.
Yeah, I actually sent him away to go do some homework for us, Kendall, because he told us that this specific, this is a very different kind of storm that hit Johannesburg. It's called a lined thunderstorm. Now, Tsietsi, you've gone and you found some stuff. Just explain to us what happened. And what is a lined thunderstorm for that matter?
This is a basic picture just to demonstrate how it develops. So what happens is you get this cold, dry air from the southwest. Obviously, it's been quite cool towards the Western Cape province and some parts of the Northern Cape. Yeah. And then you also get the warm, moist air from the northeastern side, which is summer. I mean, it's supposed to happen. And when one goes towards this, comes from the southwest going all the way towards the northeast, and one comes from northeast going sort of south. You can see with the arrows there indicating as well. I just try to get a picture that defines it mostly. Yeah. And then at that point, moisture front, at that point where they both meet, what happens is the cool air now makes the warm air rise quite rapidly. Okay? Yeah. So when that goes up, it forms in this sort of line movement. And also fueled by a bit of a high pressure cell just coming in from Namibia, as well as over much of the Atlantic Ocean there. And also coming into that anticyclonic or anti-clockwise movement of air. So when they come together and they sort of conjoin, that's when the cold air makes the warm air rise, and it happens really quickly. That's what happened yesterday. It was really hot for us in the northeast. It was really cool towards the southwestern part. And it developed, like I said, from the Bloemfontein, Kroonstad region. Yeah, and then it moves all the way towards the northeastern parts in a line movement. And they almost look like this. Now, these are not specific pictures that we have here in Gauteng, the one that we had.
But this is a picture of a line thunderstorm and kind of what happened yesterday. Yes. Is that the line?
Yeah, that's basically a line. Sometimes it's not specifically like really, really straight, because nothing in nature is actually perfect and straight. But they can also look like this, and they're quite devastating because they are sort of self-fueling, because once the cool air makes the warm air rise, it rains, and what happens again? Condensation, and then the cool air drops again.
So when you see these kinds of phenomena, these are not UFOs visiting the planet. No. These are normal weather phenomena, line storms, and we'll see a lot of that now.
And this one actually happened in KZN. This is the real picture. I just moved away now. But that's what happened in KwaZulu-Natal. And what happens is, once the cool air again drops, it moves on to next spot, it finds cooler, warmer air again, and that rises again. So the system sort of repeats itself over and over, and comes with devastating winds, with some hailstorms. So for all that are sort of, planning on going to KZN this weekend, you could be coming across it on your way here. So
indeed, you can.
Be careful.
Tsietsi Manare, our resident meteorologist, in today to give us an update as to what it really was that caused all the havoc here in Johannesburg yesterday. So if you didn't know it, it's known as a line thunderstorm, and it's kind of, the confluence of a whole bunch of factors that causes the perfect storm. And Tsietsi is good on his word to come back, actually, and come and share with us this kind of information. Elvis will be with you at the top of the hour. I'll be back tomorrow morning with more Newsroom on a Friday. Favorite show. We should have a good one. So I'll see you then. Thanks, Tsietsi.
Thank you so much, Evan. Yeah.
Assumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded, and we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water.
because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back and it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
Proceedings of the Fees Commission has once again been disrupted.
We as a university do not feel that fee-free higher education currently is feasible.
It's a Mickey Mouse commission. During in the commission, student grievances. We're not a part of the commission in the program. So that is why we tend to disturb the program.
If you tell me that I can't leave, then you are keeping me hostage.
Some students demanded that UCT lift the suspensions and expulsions of certain students.
It's 1100 hours on this Thursday, the 10th of November 2016. This is Newsroom for the final hour. I'm Elvis Preslin. We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from Auckland Park Studios here in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. Jumbo Africa today. Our focus is on the pre-election pollsters and their role in election outcome predictions. Now, in the U.S., you can recall yesterday, pollsters predicted that Donald Trump would lose against Hillary Clinton, Kendall, but they were completely wrong.
They were so wrong. They even got the speculators in the market totally wrong-footed. That's exactly why so many currencies crashed yesterday.
And that's why we're asking you this question on your screen right now. Can we still depend and trust these independent polls ahead of the elections? You know, they were also wrong. Brexit is one of them. Also here in South Africa, they said, the DA was running away with Swane, and what happened? It was very short. They had to merge with the coalition and form a coalition with the EFF, right? So, on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. We're also conducting a poll, Kendall.
Absolutely, and then literally this particular poll is about a flash flood. In Johannesburg happened yesterday. We just heard Tsietsi and Eben talking about it. And we're asking you, is it due to poor maintenance of our stormwater drainage system? Or is that what's to blame? And that's the question. Flash floods in Joburg, is poor maintenance to blame?
71% of you are saying yes. They don't clean the drains. It's simple as that. 71%. 29% are saying no.
But you know what? I think it's all speculation because we don't really know how much of the drains have been cleaned or not. Because, I mean, when last did anybody do a survey of the stormwater drainage system in Joburg?
Well, I tell you what, just down the road here from the SABC, there's a dirty drain there full of bags. And, some of the vagrants are staying in the drain.
Okay.
So, one of them. But here's a couple of comments. Jimmy says, true, always construction, but I've never seen them dealing with drainages before the rains. Drainages drains he actually mentioned, must be cleared.
100%, he is correct. Ayanda Majola, poor drainage system design is to be blamed, and I think that goes towards city planning and that kind of thing, and I think she might be on the money.
Yeah, and JRA really need to work hard on that. They need to do that continuously and making sure that they clean these things continuously. Yeah, is there more? Well, there's another one here from IH Nazo. Yes, poor maintenance at time has a hand, but we must not ignore the disaster factor and angle in these floods, which are naturally, and of course it was, as Seti indicated earlier.
Yeah. Naturally occurring incident, and it was exacerbated by the non-cleaning of the drainage system. As you
there we go. Andrew Jass.
Reckons poor maintenance, I guess that's a wake-up call for the Johannesburg municipality. Yes, lots of work still to be done and all over the country.
Thank you for your comments. You can keep them coming right here on the poll. You can also participate in the poll at SABC Newsroom. That is the Twitter handle there. Let's take a first look at your news headlines before we get to the news. President Jacob Zuma is expected to face yet another no-confidence vote in Parliament this afternoon. The South African Weather Service warns of further severe thunderstorms in Gauteng today, with yesterday's flash floods having claimed a number of lives. thousands of people take to the streets across the United States in America against some of the U.S. President-elect's views on immigrants. That's Donald Trump. Now, those are all your headlines. Let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening in the final hour on the sport.
Elvis, we've got two matches on the go right now. There's Test cricket going on between India as well as England, and number 1 and 2 Test nations in the world. But we also have Africa's major, which is on the go out at Sun City. But before I give you news about any of that, let me give you what else is happening in sports today.
43.03. It was as if he had wings on his heels in the last 50 metres.
Olympic champion and world record holder Wade Panikkar has been named as one of the 3 shortlisted finalists for the 2016 IAAF World Athlete of the Year award.
On the tee from South Africa, George Coetzee.
Africa's major, the Nedbank Golf Challenge, teed off this morning with some of the creme de la creme of the golfing world lining up to take the $1.16 million winner's check.
It's going to be a challenging match for us as well because it's a team that also participated in the Olympic Games.
And Banyana play the mighty Warriors of Zimbabwe in their last friendly match ahead of the 2016 edition of the CAF African Cup of Nations. Of course, I'll be bringing you all this a little later, about 11:35 or so, but before any of that happens, Elvis has got the news for you.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Johannesburg's emergency services will resume their search this morning for more possible victims of yesterday evening's flash floods. As you heard, 2 people died along the N3 highway in Linksfield when around 150 vehicles were trapped in a wave of water during peak hour traffic. At least 6 people were in danger of drowning when they were rescued, and many motorists were treated for minor injuries on the scene. A boundary wall at the Johannesburg Zoo collapsed following the heavy downpours, and the zoo remains closed indefinitely. Management says no people or animals were hurt. The flood also affected flights landing at the OR Tambo International Airport, and a number had to be diverted to other airports. Now, earlier we spoke to JMPD spokesperson Wayne Menard, who gave us an update on the damages caused by the floods in Johannesburg.
The damage had been caused mainly by the water, but I can say this moment is that the bridges itself wasn't affected. So the traffic is able to flow this morning. However, there is still mud on the road surface.
Is there any road closures?
No, there are no road closures this morning. However, the rescue teams have gone into the areas to search for more possible victims.
Now, Mr. Menard, what advice can you give to motorists when it comes to driving in floods and like we've seen yesterday here in Johannesburg?
Look, what I want to strongly advise anybody is not to drive through water or to drive through a road which appears to be flooded. Rather use an alternative route, or if possible, make a U-turn and take another road.
Well, there's some advice for you. Now, President Jacob Zuma is facing another no-confidence vote in Parliament today. That motion follows the release of the former Public Protector's State of Capture report. The Democratic Alliance leader, Mmusi Maimane, says his party's call for the motion will give the ANC MPs the opportunity to continue supporting President Jacob Zuma's continued disrespect for the Constitution, or they will come out in favor of the country's development. ANC Chief Whip Jackson Mthembu has described the motion as frivolous, saying the DA's calls for the motion of no confidence are founded on spurious allegations and narrow political motives. The no confidence vote will be the third in under a year, with the first 2 easily defeated by the ANC's majority in Parliament. The DA has reclaimed control of the Khathalopelo municipality at Daniel Scale in the Northern Cape. The ward was left vacant when the DA's councillor-elect Johannes Baatjies was killed in an alleged political attack before he could be sworn in after the August local government elections. 2 local ANC members and 4 others were arrested on murder charges and remain in custody. The DA and the Khathalopelo Community Forum have formed a coalition to govern the municipality. Meanwhile, in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, the ANC retained Ward 14 after it was left vacant following the murder of its councillor, Neba Daiwili, who was gunned down shortly before the resumption of voting in the local government elections. Dolly Booty is the new ward councillor in the area, winning 54% of the vote. Ward 14 was won by Ayanda de Yokwana. Thousands of people have protested across the United States against Donald Trump, blasting his campaign rhetoric around immigrants, Muslims, and other groups. In Chicago, over 1,000 people gathered outside the Trump International Hotel and Tower to vent their anger. In New York, thousands of protesters filled the streets as they made their way to Trump Tower, which is the president-elect's home. Hundreds also gathered in Philadelphia, Boston, and Seattle. Now, the victory of Donald Trump in the U.S. presidential election has come as a surprise for many around the globe. Outspoken, often brash, Trump has caused many to wonder what the world with him in the White House would look like or be like. Among those concerned are South Africans and Africans at large. Earlier, Professor John Stramlau from Wits University's Department of International Relations spoke to SABC News about how U.S.-Africa relations could change under Trump.
Things always change. It's a little early to know because Trump doesn't have any identifiable African advisors. He showed very little interest in the continent during the campaign or foreign affairs generally. As I say, he's going to be preoccupied domestically. But I think it's a good time for South Africans to take stock both of what this election means in terms of the popular protest that was thrown out there at the grassroots against the distant central government. You know, the kind of protests that were evident here in the August elections were very much grounded in real issues of concern to citizens in communities of service delivery, not some abstraction. So that this election is going to set an example in the United States, perhaps a bad example, that I think South Africans ought to digest. But then there are questions of economic trade, the future of AGOA, whether or not Obama's climate change protocol, which is very, very important to South Africa, given the double rate of global warming down here, gets implemented and upheld. Trump has threatened to erase all this protocol with the Paris Agreement on the books that Obama signed, and he can do that as executive action. So pressure on Trump to accept where the international community is going on climate change is terribly important for South Africa.
Yeah.
So there are many aspects of this, but that'll take time to sort that out, I think.
Yeah. I mean, also, you know, one thing that Trump has said from the beginning of his campaign until yesterday was that he is putting America first. He's a businessman, and we know that about Trump. He's a billionaire. If it doesn't work for America, that's the end of that. And that's why when you look at acts like AGOA and you look at relations with Africa, as you said, he hasn't really even focused on it. I don't even think he's ever spoken about it. The only time he spoke about was South Africa was in a tweet saying that we are. Let me quote the tweet. He said, "Nelson Mandela and myself had a wonderful relationship. He was a special man. He'll be missed. I really like Nelson Mandela, but South Africa is a crime-ridden mess that is just waiting to explode. Not a good situation for the people." I think that's the only words he's ever said about South Africa.
I think that's probably correct, and I think it reflects the limited knowledge that he has of any reality. And I know a journalist, African-American, Charlotte Herr-Galt, who's just written for The New Yorker about the South Africa-U.S. relationship, and says that this is an interdependent one. We have to learn from our struggles for human rights from each other. And so this is going to be a testing time in U.S.-South Africa relations, as you suggest.
Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has just congratulated the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. He was speaking at the United Nations in New York ahead of Hillary Clinton's concession speech at a hotel in the same city.
I congratulate Mr. Donald Trump on his election as 45th President of the United States of America. In the aftermath of hard-fought and often divisive campaign, it is worth recalling and reaffirming that unity in diversity of the United States is one of the country's greatest strengths. I encourage all Americans to stay true to that spirit. Today's global challenges demand concerted global action, and joint solutions. As a founding member of the United Nations and Security Council members, permanent members of the Security Council, the United States is an essential actor across the international agenda. People everywhere look to the United States to use its remarkable power to help lift humanity up and to work for the common good. The United Nations will count on the new administration to strengthen the bonds of international cooperation as we strive together to uphold the shared ideals, combat climate change, advance human rights, promote mutual understanding, and implement the Sustainable Development Goals to achieve lives of peace, prosperity, and dignity for all. Now more than ever, we must mobilize around the principles and common values of the United Nations Charter. I would also like to express my deep appreciation to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for a lifetime commitment to peace, the advancement of women, and the well-being of children. She has been a powerful global symbol of women's empowerment, and I have no doubt that she will continue to contribute to our work across the world.
Meanwhile, climate experts meeting in Morocco for this year's climate change conference say that Trump has a moral responsibility to honor the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, Donald Trump has expressed doubts about global warming and has said that he would cancel the deal if elected. The outgoing President Barack Obama's administration has pledged to reduce U.S. greenhouse gas emissions, but Republicans argued at the time that it will work against the U.S. economy. So we'll watch that space. Meanwhile, U.S. President Barack Obama will host the President-elect Donald Trump in the Oval Office today. They will be hoping to ease a smooth transition of power and steady the nerves after an election that has shocked the world. Meanwhile, defeated presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has offered to work with Trump on behalf of the country. In an emotional speech after an unexpected night in New York, the first woman to head a major political party in a U.S. presidential election also apologized to her supporters.
An emotional Clinton said she hoped President-elect Trump would be a successful leader for all Americans as the heartbreak of defeat for herself, her family and supporters began to set in.
I know how disappointed you feel because I feel it too. And so do tens of millions of Americans who invested their hopes and dreams in this effort. This is painful, and it will be for a long time. But I want you to remember this. Our campaign was never about one person or even one election. It was about the country we love and about building an America that's hopeful, inclusive, and big-hearted. We have seen that our nation is more deeply divided than we thought. But I still believe in America, and I always will. And if you do, then we must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead. Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power.
President Barack Obama also congratulated the New York businessman while pledging to work towards a smooth transition of power.
I have instructed my team to follow the example that President Bush's team set 8 years ago and work as hard as we can to make sure that this is a successful transition for the president-elect. Because we are now all rooting for his success in uniting and leading the country.
As the historic nature of Clinton's candidacy failing to scale the final hurdle, devastating legions of women in particular who had supported her.
I work with women. This for me was an important moment, and also for the women of the world, because through her candidature we had an opportunity to lift the aspirations of many women in many parts of the world and take the road to gender equality just in the U.S. and out of the U.S. We have missed a significant historic opportunity.
Outside Trump headquarters in New York, a question about what his surprising victory could mean for Africa.
Well, he's already addressed those issues, and he will in the coming days. But I would ask the people of South Africa a question back to them. Name one or two things that you think went really great while Barack Obama was the president. What happened in South Africa? What happened to our relations that you would point to and say that really needs to continue?
Trump's 4-year term begins on January 20th when he takes the oath of office in Washington. Sherman Briceby's SABC News, New York.
Well, so how do you like that? Because we're asking you the question today. The pollsters had it wrong completely, right? They said that Hillary Clinton will win this election. So we're asking you, can I still, or we still trust independent polls ahead of any election for that matter? Remember the referendum in the Brexit vote? Well, they said the UK will stay, and they did not. They also mentioned the same here in South Africa. They also mentioned the same in the US. Can we still trust them? I'd like to get your thoughts on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. But we're also running a poll with regards to what happened yesterday, the flash floods that we have in Johannesburg. We're asking you the question, is that poor maintenance that is to blame for it? Well, so far, 300 votes in, 20 hours left, 72% of you are saying yes. And then 28% of you are saying no. So if that is the case, what should be done? That's the question to the JRA that we should pose. That's the Joburg Works Agency, to make sure that those drains are cleaned. And if it is a flash flood that we did not expect, how do we deal with it? Well, we'll take a break and we'll be right back after that.
Macro is lending a helping hand with big festive season savings that'll move you. Like the Totem 16-inch or 20-inch Mojo bikes for only $10.99. Save 200 Rand. Or save 200 Rand on the Bounce King 10-foot trampoline, now only $24.99. And zip away on a Zingo X100 electric scooter for $1,999. Save 300 Rand. Share in these and other big festive savings for home, for business, for life. Only at Macro. Big on life.
That many have called for a stabilization of the recently turbulent political climate in South Africa. This confidence directly correlates with the amount of foreign direct investment, or FDI, that comes into the country. Now, for the developing world, attracting foreign direct investment is an important part of building a nation, as investment can result in the building of infrastructure, employment opportunities, and the government can tax the profits made by these companies. Part of attracting investment is the creation of an attractive economic environment through tax incentives and financial grants to companies. But what if the very same companies attracted use the same concessions to minimize how much tax governments can get their hands on? Now, it's estimated that Africa loses between $50 and $100 billion a year due to illicit financial outflows like tax dodging and evasion. Who then really benefits from foreign direct investment, and do developing countries inadvertently turn themselves into tax havens to attract it? Joining us in studio is the Executive Director of the Tax Justice Network, a London-based NGO dedicated to high-level research, analysis and advocacy in the area of international tax and the international aspects of financial regulation, Mr. John Christensen. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
John, let's start off with the very first thing when we talk about foreign direct investment. What of that forms part and parcel of what comes into a country? Does that go directly to the country's GDP?
Look, foreign direct investment can be a force for very good economic development. No question about it. It can create jobs, it can bring in new technologies, it can create wealth. The big question is, first of all, is that actually happening, or is it simply buying existing companies and taking over existing jobs? Is it actually bringing in new technology? And crucially, are the investments yielding tax revenues at the end of the day? Or are we giving away too many subsidies under pressure, really under pressure to attract investment? Are we giving away too many tax breaks?
So they come in different forms, this foreign direct?
Absolutely. I mean, we can't distinguish between investment that actually creates new jobs and creates wealth and investment that simply buys up existing real estate or existing companies. You know, we've got to make that distinction.
Which ones, if you have to break it down for us, which ones is the ones that create jobs and the ones that just buys up new businesses?
Well, direct investment into new areas, new technologies, new areas of the economy, they can create jobs. The big question facing South Africa and most African nations is, to what extent do you actually need to give subsidies, tax breaks, tax holidays, to actually attract the investment? Because when you talk to investors around the world, what attracts them is, first of all, stable markets, having strong markets for their products, having a trained workforce, having the right infrastructure, having all of the mineral resources they might want or whatever. That's what attracts them.
Yes.
So the big question mark is, do you actually have to give them the tax breaks to attract them anyway? Because let's face it, a trained workforce, all that infrastructure, all those port facilities, airports, schools and so on, they take tax dollars. So that's the big question. And in my opinion, too many African countries sell themselves short by giving away too many tax breaks.
Before we get to that point, I just want to really get to the bottom of these particular projects when we talk about greenfields and brownfields. You did mention the two differences. Just break that down for us. How does it work, greenfields and brownfields?
Well, I mean, if we look around the world, you see an awful lot of inward investment is coming into countries actually buying up either existing real estate or existing companies, or it might even be football clubs if you're talking about Britain.
Yes.
But they're there already. So the question is this creating new jobs? Is this bringing in new technologies? Is this actually helping the economy to expand? Or is there something else at play? And very often you find that what's at play is that the so-called inward investment is coming in because of tax breaks and the ability to set up tax avoidance structures.
Why do foreign companies decide to invest outside of their own countries and invest in other countries?
Well, they might well see a very good and legitimate reason for investing in Africa. Africa is a young continent, big, strong, emerging markets for their products, plenty of mineral resources. Africa has a lot to attract investment, and I can see no reason why it shouldn't attract investment. You mentioned political stability earlier on. That is, of course, a key thing for any investor coming from outside. But also, they'll be looking for a well-trained workforce. They'll be looking for an infrastructure that enables them to bring goods in, export goods. All of these things will attract investment.
Now, you did indicate earlier that African countries, though, are selling themselves short. In which way? Is that by providing tax incentives, which seem to be unequal for the country's businesses that's currently operating within a country?
Yeah, I think tax incentives are one of the big things. You find that tax incentives ranging from long tax holidays or special deductibilities to all sorts of tax reliefs are being offered to attract inward investment, which in most cases would happen anyway, because if there's a business case for making an investment in South Africa, then that business case should be strong enough to go ahead with the investment, regardless of whether there's a tax break. You know, the famous American investor Warren Buffett says, "I've never made an investment on the back of tax breaks." Is the investment good in the first place?
Yes.
And I've advised plenty of investors in the past, and tax has never really been an important consideration.
Now, multinational companies often maneuver the provisions made by these governments to attack them in order to minimize their tax and maximize their profits, right? So what are some of these methods being used? I've heard about the double Irish, for instance, in Ireland, where Apple, for instance, get lots of tax breaks, almost paying zero in terms of their international income being taxed in Ireland.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. The whole issue of how investment comes in through tax havens is a global issue. It doesn't just affect Africa, but Africa is vulnerable to this. A lot of inward investment is structured through offshore tax havens, largely, I suspect, in order to avoid or evade paying tax. And I don't make much distinction between the two because at the end of the day, it's African people who are losing the tax revenues. Tax havens have been around for a very long time. It's amazing that the world hasn't taken more stronger action to close these places down. The big problem with Apple, for example, and this is the reason why such strong action is being taken by the European Commission against Apple, is that they've come into markets, they've structured themselves right from the start so they can shift their profits, which are enormous, through Irish subsidiaries to other tax havens and pay virtually no tax in the countries where they actually operate and make their profits. Now, the same thing happens here in Africa. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, first of all, public revenues you're losing substantial public revenues. Secondly, it means in many cases, inward investment is getting a tax break which is not available to the domestic companies. And that creates a distorted marketplace, the unlevel playing field.
Yes. And that creates inequality.
That creates inequality, but it also means that domestic businesses are losing market share because they face an what's called unfair market competition. It's fine for companies to compete on price and the quality of service. It's not good for them to compete on special subsidies and special deals being done by governments. And that's why the European Commission is now cracking down on these special deals through offshore financial centres like Luxembourg.
European Commission is cracking down, you say, but the French economist Thomas Piketty says that there should be a global tax or a universal tax for all companies. Would that perhaps solve the problem of tax havens?
Well, it would solve the problem of countries bidding one against the other in what I regard as a totally futile battle to attract investment. As I said earlier, if there's a business case for investing in South Africa, you don't need to shower the businesses with tax breaks and tax incentives. They'll come anyway. What Piketty is suggesting is that there should be a baseline for the corporate income tax so that you don't find countries like Luxembourg and Ireland and others undercutting South Africa's ability, actually South Africa's sovereign right to set a minimum corporate tax rate.
Is there a difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion?
Well, the lawyers would try to pretend that tax avoidance is legal. But that's not the case. We don't know whether a tax avoidance scheme is legal or illegal, and we can't know until such time as the court has determined whether a particular scheme is legal or illegal. So, and that's a crucial point because what we find is that in most cases, tax avoidance schemes are being sold when the likelihood of them surviving in court is very low indeed, sometimes as low as 25%.
Now, we talked about illicit outflows earlier. How that illicit outflows between 50 and 100 billion US dollars per annum, how can that solve Africa's problem as a continent?
Well, Africa needs investment, and the ideal way of getting that investment is actually to create an environment where domestic capital stays in the country and is invested in the country and is taxed in the country. The problem with so many African, and that's not just African countries, so many countries around the world face these days, is that so much capital disappears offshore to tax havens like Mauritius, or Jersey or wherever, comes back dressed up as foreign direct investment, gets the tax breaks. The end result is, in many respects, it works against investment, against development, because you'll find, for example, that politicians will then increase taxes on consumers, sales taxes rise. So it's the poorer people who are having to pay taxes because the richer people are not paying taxes and the big companies are not paying taxes. And that actually harms the quality of development. That creates the inequality that Thomas Piketty and others, including myself, think is so harmful to development here in Africa and elsewhere.
Foreign direct investment, especially for South Africa, we right now on the precipice of a possible downgrade. How would foreign direct investment assist us as a country to perhaps get away from getting to junk status and, of course, assist us with economic growth that we sincerely need in this country?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about it. Investment is crucial for development. It creates jobs, brings in technology, crucial to investment really is this whole idea of political stability, competence in the long term. Now, that requires a long-term commitment to education, to training, to creating infrastructure, to supporting research and development. All of that takes a lot of tax money. So let's stop this idea, or put an end to the idea that in order to attract investment, we've got to give away all those tax dollars. You need the tax dollars because that's what creates the environment that will attract investment.
Now, we talked about the tax havens, but is there any African country that really is a tax haven in your books as the FSA?
High on my list, and no question about it, is Mauritius.
Yes.
Mauritius has emerged as one of the world's leading tax havens. We actually describe it more as a secrecy jurisdiction. Not only does it give unnecessary tax breaks, and it's used as a way for multinational companies investing in Africa to avoid paying tax, it also provides a highly secretive environment. And the problem with secrecy is it attracts and encourages corrupt activities, including tax evasion.
Now, we've got high levels of really good corporate taxes and laws and legislation in this particular country. How does that impact, not just for South Africa, but for the rest of Africa? And can that be utilized to strengthen tax legislation in order to make sure that companies do not avoid tax?
Well, you know, I've always thought of the South African Revenue Service, SARS, as one of the continent's leading revenue services, huge commitment to staff training in the past, and it's been something of a gold standard. There must be a government commitment to maintaining that gold standard, keeping the staff, particularly the highly specialized staff you need when it comes to taxing multinational companies. Now, multinational companies employ legions of lawyers, top lawyers, top tax accountants and so on, to set up their tax affairs. And if you're going to be able to effectively tax them, you need to have teams of really good people in SARS who can handle that kind of negotiation. And that means committing to a long-term program of training, investing in the staff, retaining the staff, supporting them, not politically interfering with them, letting them get on with the job.
John, in closing, advice for South Africa and even Africa when it comes to tax evasion, tax laws, or anything in particular that you would like to raise?
Well, I think that it's crucial to have a tax environment which is clear, which is fair, which treats all investors equally, so you don't give the tax breaks to the foreign direct investors. Make sure that the tax system creates an enabling environment for development which sustains investment in infrastructure, in education, in training, in creating the kind of long-term investment environment that will actually attract genuine investors.
Mr. Christensen, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Pleasure.
That was John Christensen. He is the Executive Director of the Tax Justice Network.
No, they haven't.
Do you know why?
Well, we wouldn't know. Firstly, we'll ask.
I can tell you.
Why?
They say you're selling out.
Why?
Well, I guess that's a question you need to engage them.
Why would the African Union try and separate human rights and women's rights?
Women's rights are indeed human rights.
So we need to be asking ourselves, what kind of society are we? What kind of family structures do we have where fathers turn on their daughters?
If a policeman, is seen to be accessing psychological services, couldn't that be seen as a sign of weakness?
People are waiting for somebody to discover them.
Absolutely.
And that's not everybody's story, am I right? I mean, there's so many of us who can be the best and stars, but you can't sit there and wait for somebody to say, I think what you're doing is great.
Which are so different to his past.
I really wish I could say thanks to him. And mind you, I'm the man. I make coffee and I'm proud of it.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News Channel.
Now, we had flash floods in Johannesburg yesterday. Back to that main story of the day. Edenvale in the East Rand is one of the areas that was worst hit by yesterday's flash floods that affected Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni yesterday. Now, our reporter Stefina Kumani is there to look at the extent of the damage caused by the floods. Stefina, a very good morning to you. Can you paint us a picture of what is happening there?
Yes, I can paint a picture of what is happening here. We are indeed at in Edenvale in a suburb called Eastleigh. As you earlier mentioned that Edenvale is in Ekurhuleni. What we're seeing right now is cars. We counted close to 10 cars on one side of the river. We have 3 containers that are actually blocking a bridge so water cannot go through. We have spoken to businesses here. People are trying to clean up after yesterday's flash floods. We also saw the levels. I mean, it was almost thigh high, the water levels yesterday in the various businesses here. Businesses owners are reporting, losses into the millions of rand. But what we don't actually see right now is the disaster services, people to come clean up, people to come take these cars out of the river to ensure that should it rain again today, we don't have a situation whereby bridges are blocked and water cannot go through, which then means that water will find itself again in people's workshops and their businesses. From your vantage point where you are right now, how many cars are in the river that you can literally see? I actually literally can't. There's about 6 cars. Mm-hmm. About 6 cars that are in the river. Earlier on, we spoke to one of the owners whose car was here, and he actually told us how his car got into the river. Now, what he related to us was that he was actually not in the car, but he had parked the car at his workplace, and he was out, and the entire parking lot of cars found themselves in the river. The floods were just so strong yesterday. We saw a man also trying to go into a car and retrieve, he says, I think his license and his other documentation, his other important documentation. Mm-hmm. Now, what does the community say? Are they worried because the South African Weather Service says today that they have plans in place to help the community there? So is there any help that they have received so far? Well, residents are actually complaining that they cannot, they're not getting any joy or any assistance from the municipality. What they're saying is that it actually flooded 2 weeks ago. Nobody came to clean. They then believe that this is the reason why yesterday's floods, in particular this area that we're in, that's why there was so much damage because the pipes were blocked. Like I said, even now there's 3 containers, steel containers that are blocking a bridge. We see cars moving, but there is some sort of, with a layman eye, that I can see some sort of structural damage to the bridge here. And as I had earlier mentioned, that we actually haven't seen disaster services or Ekurhuleni out here to do something, Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much. That's our reporter on the scene, Stefina Kumani, joining us live from Edenvale, Ekurhuleni. As you can see, some of the pictures coming through. Terrible disaster there. Right now, time for your sports news with Kendall Makamate.
Elvis, thanks very much. Now, South African 400-meter Olympic champion Wade van Niekerk is on the shortlist for the IAAF's World Athlete of the Year award. This after his world record-breaking sprint at the Rio Olympic Games in August earlier this year. Van Niekerk will be fighting for the award against his idol, Jamaican superstar Usain Bolt, who cleaned up the sprint golds in Rio. His fellow South African Olympic 800-meter champion Caster Semenya failed to make the shortlist.
Van Niekerk, 43.03. It was as if he had wings on his heels.
This is the event where the 24-year-old stunned the world and hoisted the South African flag sky high. In August 2015, Van Niekerk produced a sensational run of 43.48 seconds to upset a star-studded field that included former world champion LaShawn Merritt and the former Olympic champion Kieran James. Two-time 5,000 and 10,000 meters Olympic champion Mo Farah of Britain is also vying for the award against Van Niekerk and Usain Bolt. Farah won the European Athlete of the Year award. But there's no denying that the 5-time former winner of the award, Bolt, is in the league of his own when it comes to 100 and 200 meters events. The Jamaican became the first person to win 3 consecutive Olympic golds in Rio. And he also holds the world records in the 2 disciplines at 9.58 seconds and 19.19 seconds respectively. His compatriot, Ellen Thompson, matched his feat by also winning the 100 and 200 meters golds in Rio. She is in the women's list against Ethiopian distance runner Almaz Ayana, who's being recognized for her stunning 10,000 meters victory in Rio. Anita Wlodarczyk of Poland also made the women's list after retaining her hammer throw title in Rio. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now, Bafana coach Shakes Mashaba has called up Mamelodi Sundowns centre midfielder Diani Mabunda to replace the injured Dean Furman. It's been a struggle, however, to find a replacement for Tebogo Langerman at left back. The 2 injured players have been released from the team. South Africa face Senegal and won a World Cup qualifier at the Peter Mokaba Stadium this coming Saturday.
The match against Senegal is now a must-win for Bafana after they gave away a slender lead against Burkina Faso in Ouagadougou last month. But the home side do not have a good home record in the qualifiers. South Africa will not be at the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Gabon after failing to win a single qualifier at home. Bafana, through to Minos, Gambia and Mauritania, as well as eventual Group M winners Cameroon, to finish third in their group.
I think it's the last game for this year up until we play again next year. So we're going to end up sitting well in a group stage, in a log. So we will try our best as players. Like I said, we know how important it is and we know who we're facing. So as a team, we're ready for the challenge.
Most players were in action for their respective clubs this past weekend, and coach Shakes Mashaba will have to manage the players properly leading up to the crucial match.
We traveled on Monday. We got here Monday afternoon. That's why we didn't train. We said, no, let's give them a free afternoon. And when we talk about a free afternoon, it's not people going in the mall or what. They've got to go sleep. Keep those legs off the ground as much as you can so that circulation starts from scratch.
Mashaba says his boys are capable of scoring first to unsettle the highly rated Senegalese side.
If you look at the AFCON game, you're talking about 2015. I mean, if you look at all 3 games in the group stages that we played, first half were fireworks. In all 3 games, we scored first.
Senegal are currently top of the group with 3 points, with South Africa and Burkina Faso tied second with a point each. Sfeso Ramara, SABC News.
Now, Banyana expecting a tough match when they play Zimbabwe today in their last international friendly ahead of the 2016 edition of the Women's CAF African Cup of Nations. The game represents an opportunity to grow some of the new team members.
It's been an unfortunate turn of events for Bafana coach Shakes Mashaba. Langerman has been ruled out due to a hamstring injury, while Furman has been withdrawn due to a hairline fracture to his ribs. The absence of the 2 key players will definitely be felt. Both have been in good form for their clubs, and their experience would have added value on match day. Mashaba can now only hope that the replacements will be able to accomplish the task if given a run.
If you look at the players that we're talking about, they are our key players in the team. Obviously, we will miss them, but I think, as I'm saying, we're going to have subs. We can only hope that the subs comes to the party and handily fit into those positions and make sure that they take off where the other players left. Yes, it is a blow. It is a blow to us.
The coach is crossing his fingers that those who suffered minor knocks recover before the weekend. Dane Clayt is facing a late fitness test. Fortunately, Ronan Williams and Andile Jali have been declared fit. SABC News.
Well, there you had it, a double dose preview on Bafana, what's thought of what their chances at their match against Senegal. Now, earlier on in the golf, we had South Africa's George Coetzee tied for the lead after 4 holes. Since then, the lead has changed a few times. Coetzee himself has slipped to a tie for 7th, while Jaco van Zyl is in 2nd place. Let's have a quick look at the goings-on at the immaculate Sun City Golf Course, which was designed by Gary Player.
Last week in Turkey, and it really was good to see.
Nobody on the fairway at 3. Andrew Johnston bunker right. Peters and Goosen both missing at left. And more problems for the 2 in the left, possibly. Pretty well blocked out, although it's a right flag at 3 today. 20 on, 4 off the right, and the green sloping, as you can see, back to front.
Well, Peters has found that bush.
Now, of course, we're going to be staying abreast of exactly what's going on. This is day 1 of the Nedbank Golf Challenge, which is, as you know, is also being included on the race to Dubai. Now, there have been many firsts in the test between India and England in Rajkot. It was the first loss of the toss that India had experienced under captain Virat Kohli. It was also the first time that any visiting team had put in 500 runs against the host. At least that's since Kolkata, since India did it themselves in Kolkata. Let's take some live pictures and visuals coming out of Rajkot, where India are now being put into bat after England put up 537 runs, courtesy of Joe Root, Moeen Ali and Ben Stokes.
The ball coming in to Gambhir. We look to score runs on the leg side.
They've obviously got a plan for Gambhir.
Okay, now that's where we're going to leave it. Just a little bit of a tidbit of what's going on out there. Should be a very interesting test match. We're staying close to that one. The number 1 and number 2 in our test rankings. That is exactly where we're going to leave it. The time has just hit. I believe it's almost time for us to say goodbye and sayonara. Elvis, I do believe that we'll be back tomorrow morning, same time, same place, and hopefully we've got more interesting news. It's been a very busy couple of days.
Busy couple of days, but we'll also bring you some more updates from Kendall about the golf. Right? So you have yourself a fantastic day ahead. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
Ligamos. Hey, man.
ANC moved to ease tensions created by the